Yes, this is very much of a different setup than I'm usually going. Victor Antonio, everybody. But for those who don't know, let me break it down a little bit the way that I like to do it. You know what I mean? Phenomenal and professional public speaker. Amongst that, college educated with multiple degrees. One being in engineering, which I want to get to a little bit later in a book that I'm really getting into of yours. Business consultant, author. Hosted your own network TV show on Spike TV, Life or Debt, which is actually a dope name. Like Life or Debt, that sticks out to me. You are also now a successful podcaster that's gotten you 200,000 subscribers on YouTube?
YouTube, correct.
My family, Victor Antonio, everybody. Hey, if you don't know, Google them.
I'm on the Nick of Time show. I finally made it. I'm big time because I made it on the Nick of Time. I'm big time. Record that.
Big time now. You can add this to you can add this to the list of accolades now that you finally made it on the Nick of Time show.
I'm moving that to the top of my list. Like, dude, I was on the Nick of Time show, man. Come on, man. So,
I know. No, this is to. I mean, I had a guy on here. A friend of mine, this is very like, to me, this is like a little dream come true having you on here, because there's so many moving parts and pieces to each episode that I have certain people that have kind of had their hands into, my motivation to do this. But I had a guy on here, Mo Man, he's a rapper from Atlanta, author too, really good dude. And he, had started it like his own little podcast. He was just going live on Facebook. And I've been wanting to do this since like 2016, 17, like watching Joe Rogan and seeing all of that. And I'm like, I like to talk. I like to do all this. And then I inboxed him. I'm like, bro, if this is this easy to do, like, this is what I want to do. And this is how it is. Immediately, though, I ended up calling you and texting you, and then we figured it out. He said, you should be doing this. Let me see a video. Make sure you're centered. Do this and do that. A couple of things I messed up a little bit on, but I'm getting a little bit better in there. But it's truly a major honor to have you on here, to being like my first sponsor ever, the first person that, all the equipment that I needed. Nikki, get this, do this, do that, and good luck, and sent me on my way. And I finally got you here.
But yeah, man, but give yourself a hand, man, because I think a lot of people talk about doing stuff like this, but they don't get around to doing it. They find every excuse not to do it. And you're like, you just kind of threw yourself in head first, we'll figure this out. It's like, throw yourself in the water, we'll figure out how to swim later. And that's exactly the way to do it, man. It's exactly the way to do it.
God, I appreciate it too. It was a dream for me, to do this, and then it's kind of eerie at a point, because you got me my first piano back in 87, 88, something, the big back. Gray one, way back. I won't say the year.
I remember that piano. Yeah.
Do you?
Oh yeah, I do remember that piano. Of course I do, man. It was one of my first organs I had. And it was one of my first little jam organs. So I gave you that one because then I got a synthesizer, like another level synthesizer. So yeah, man.
Yeah, I got that one, and then me and my brother, we were on it and just messing around, and then that just took me, my love for music, to a whole nother level. And then once I started performing, started recording more, this is when I was living in Chicago. This is when you kind of set me up with like a mock, website, and it seems it's weird.
I'm not gonna get emotional for a long time, haven't you? I've been.
You haven't. I'm not gonna get emotional on this one, I promise everybody, but like for every major facet of whatever it is that I was doing, whether it was, as far as what I've wanted to do, my dream to like spark my creativity, for me to want to push it full forward, like you have literally been the crux in all of it. And I want to very much thank you for that.
By the way, you know why? Do you know why I did it, Nikki? True story.
I'm
not making this up. Is that, is if you look at our upbringing, we didn't have a lot, right? And so nobody ever really kind of like helped you out. And it wasn't because they didn't want to. It's just because they didn't have the resource or the know-how how to help. And I remember always saying to myself, I said, when you can help somebody, just help them out, especially family, right? And so, like, I've never said no to any literally have never said no to any family member who says, man, can you help me with something, right? And so you kept like kind of like hinting you wanted to do something, need help with something. I'm like, all right, he keeps it. So I just kept throwing stuff at you. And you're one of the few, like, I can count them on that hand, right? That many fingers, who come up to me and says, hey man, can you help me do this? I'm trying to do this, right? Or I'm interested in doing this. What do I do? And I think I'm a good resource, and you're one of the few people in the family that take advantage of it. I'm like, good for you, man. So I'd rather help family than help somebody else, if you know what I mean.
Right, exactly. And then there's that, that old saying where, once you make it to the top, you're going to lose a lot of friends and whatnot. But at the end of the day, you won't lose anybody if everybody's rooting for you to win. You know what I mean? So it's like, if I make it to a certain situation, like I want everybody to win. I can't be no hater. I want everybody to win. So it's like now people that have, seen me do this, they're saying the same thing I was telling, the buddy of mine that inspired me. They're like, thank you. I've been wanting to do this. And I'm real big inspiration. So it's been pretty cool thus far. I mean, I can't express just how exciting even this. I had this envision too, 10 episodes, because Rick and Morty is my favorite cartoon, and they go by 10 seasons or 10 episodes. They figure 10 is enough. You know what I mean? I'm to drown it out, but who knows what's gonna happen. Also, I mean, just we got out the way. We got all that out the way. We got a few things to talk about. You, to me, it always seemed like, and this is, I don't know. I'm gonna probably naturally compliment you all day on this, but you weren't the type to follow a dream. To me, it's just like, I know what I want to do, and then you've made dreams up along the way. Like, it's incredible. It's like the engineering degree, then you move on to public speaking. You move on to being an author, and it's successful in every single thing you do. Like, as far as I'm sure that there's like ups and downs and stuff in that matter, that you probably, a couple little roadblocks that you've hit, but like seeing all of that, I mean, have you like just sat back and kind of gave yourself let me look at it from this point of view and say, wow, look at what I've done and look at what I've accomplished? Like, how does that feel?
Yeah, I mean, once in a while it hits me. I mean, there's moments. It's hard to describe the moments when it hits you. I'll give you the last moment, the real moment. I was in the Middle East, in Oman, right? And I was doing a presentation, right? And Omanis are just beautiful people, man. And so I did this presentation, this big room, did a big presentation, like 800 people, it was a big room. And afterwards, somebody who I'd known, because I've met many times, because I've traveled to the region many times, said to me, hey, my father was wondering if you wouldn't mind doing a dinner, workshop, like a little session for a couple of people. And I'm like, I'm in Oman. I got nothing else to do. Why not? I said, sure, man, not a big deal. And he says, really? I said, yeah, not a big deal. Like, not even going to charge you. I'll just do it, right? And so I remember they picked me up in a nice limo, which I was like, that's nice. And then they drove me. The guy drove me, and we drove. And we get to the guy's house. Well, it wasn't even a house, man. It was like a palace, okay? Let's be honest. It was a palace, right? Wow. And they had set up the whole backyard, right? And this is evening. The whole backyard with, if you can imagine, all these round white tables, I mean, just like laid out. And right in the middle, there's like this little whiteboard with microphone where I'm going to be speaking, but it's going to be outside, almost in the backyard, in the courtyard, right? And we walk into this palace, and the place is like full, right? It's like full of people. It's about a good 70, 80, maybe 100 people right in there. I'm like, and then I just look down, I just see as I walk in the door, Nikki, there's this long buffet line, right? Like all this, pero food para siempre, forever, right? And so I meet the father, and the formal greeting. He says, he says to me, you are honored guest tonight. We have been waiting for you. Dinner will begin now. I was like, and literally everybody's looking at me like, who is this guy, right? And so that was already a moment, right? So I had to be the first one to actually grab food. Nobody else would touch the food until I grabbed the food, right? And so I said, all right, well, I'll just start eating, right? Just straight up hood, right? Yeah, let's get something to eat. Let's get the grub on, right?
Yeah, right.
And so I get something to eat. Then we're done eating, right? It's like 30 minutes. And then they move everybody out to the courtyard, right? Like a beautiful courtyard. I mean, just beautiful, right? And it was nighttime, clear sky. You can see the stars and everything. And there was a full moon, Nikki. There was a full moon. And I'm doing this presentation, but I'm also having this out-of-body experience. I'm going, kid from the hood in the Middle East, doing a presentation under the moonlight in a desert country. It was like one of those moments you go like, how did we get here? And I've had so many of those moments where I think what's interesting sometimes is that nobody's around, right? You know how when you're growing up, you're like, I can't wait for people to see me do this, right? See me blow up like this, see me do this and all. And the thing is, what I've realized that all the wonderful moments I've had, nobody's been around. Like all the special moments, nobody's been around. I got a bunch of stories about, I'm like, where are the cameras? I need somebody to capture this
Yeah,
moment because
right.
this is awesome. Nobody else is going to believe this is happening to me, right? And I meet people, I do things, and I'm like, there's nobody around, right? That's none of our friends or family. So those are moments when I look back and I go, that's a lot. But I've never looked at it that way. When I, like, for example, I tell the story that the reason I got my engineering degree is because mommy threatened me. She said, if you don't go to school, college, right? You got to go work with my father at the factory. My father was working at like the Acme Frame Company. I'm not making that up. I know it sounds like it's out of Roadrunner, but I'm not making that up, right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
And I remember I'd gone there one time with him. I don't know why, but I remember how dirty it was. And my mother said, well, if you don't go to college, you got to go work with your father in the factory. And I'm like, don't want to work. And I remember I chose electrical engineering because it's the only thing that kind of made sense to me. You know, I looked at
But that's
mechanical
how you
engineering.
fall on electrical engineering.
What's
like,
that?
That's not an easy thing to fall. Like, how you fall on electrical engineering? That's like not an easy thing to fall on.
Like literally, I'm sitting in one of my classes. It's my senior year, right? And this is gonna sound like I'm bragging, but I'm not. I swear to you, I'm not bragging. This is just the way things turned out for me. Mommy would always like, if you didn't get your homework right or your schoolwork right, she was on you, like on you with the chancleta, right? Like, yeah, that whole thing, right? And so I remember I said, let me just get some good grades and just so she'll get off my back. And so I was the guy that always just did the work, got it done early, then ran outside to play basketball, play baseball, whatever it was, right? So I would just do that. I was in that mode all the time, right? I just get the work done. Sometimes I'd do it like during class, like, I can do this. And so I would do the work, right? And so it wasn't until like literally, Nicky, about like 2 months before I graduated that I found out that I think it was, now I'm trying to remember the number. I haven't thought about it. I was either ranked number 2 or 3 in my class. I think it was number 3 in my whole high school class. I didn't know that. That's what I said. I said, what? And I didn't know this. The way I found out, you'll love this story. The way I found out was there was this other guy, like my nemesis. You know that other guy you're always competing against? I wasn't competing, but he was competing against me. And he's like, dude, I ranked 11, right? He says, what'd you rank, Victor? And I go, I don't know. I haven't checked. And I didn't want to check because I'd not really followed my grades. I just wasn't. As long as I passed, as long as I got A's and B's, I was like, mommy's off my back. This is good, right? And so I remember.
I wasn't gonna play that either.
So I remember he was like, he caught me in the hallway. He asked me, what's your ranking? I'm like, dude, I don't know. He said, well, let's go find out. I said, what do you mean, let's go find out? I said, yeah, we go over there and find out. Pero un entrometido, right? Just somebody who's in your business all the time, right?
Yeah.
And I remember I went into the room with them, and the lady was like looking stuff up. She goes, what's your social security number? I go, here's my social security number. And she goes, what was that number again? And I go, and she goes, I think it's number 3. I think she goes, you're 3rd. And dude, the look on the guy's face, it was
number
beautiful.
11.
It was like, I go, 3. And I just left. That was it. I don't know what he did, but I just left, right? And so when I was looking at not wanting to go to work with my father in the factory, I'm sitting in one of my classes, and I knew I was 3rd ranked. So I said, I think I can get into a pretty good college. It was literally a bingo card. You know how they have those cork boards on in your science class. They have these
sure.
stuff too, right? Just a cork board. And they always put like stuff for colleges, right? And there was one, Illinois Institute of Technology. And I remember asking the professor, the teacher, his name was Mr. Hodges. I said, Mr. Hodges, is that a good school? He goes, it's a very good school, Victor. I said, really? I said, do you recommend it? He goes, yeah, I recommend it. And he looked at me like, and so I grabbed the bingo card, the thing where you submit for more information. And so I remember it had mechanical engineer. I go, no, I don't want to fix cars, right? I said, that's why I just didn't know, man. I didn't know, right? I just didn't know what mechanic. I'm thinking it's like, mechanic, right? I didn't know, Nick.
Right.
And so then there was like, I'm like aerospace engineer. I said, Puerto Rican.
I don't want to be that
astronaut. Not happening, right? There was civil engineering. I don't want to be nice to people. And the last one was electrical engineering. I go, okay, I get that because I'd done like little electrical projects in school, right? When I was in elementary school. Remember you get a battery, a bunch of lights, and you make the thing turn on.
Yeah, and you attach it to them.
There you go. So I understood that. That was my level of understanding of engineering. And so I submitted the information. I submitted it also to the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, which is a little bit away. It was like 3-4 hours away, whatever it is. And they both came back and they both accepted me, right? And the way I decided to go to IIT had a matriculation fee, which basically means you commit to the school, of only $50.
Sure.
The other one wanted like $250. Well, we didn't have $250. So I decided to go with the one with the $50. And that's how I wound up going to IIT, which was on the south side of Chicago. And I would take one bus and two trains every day to get there and to get back. You know what I mean? And so when I say I clawed, I mean, Nick, you don't understand, dude. I clawed my way to that engineering degree. Like you don't, I cried my way sometimes. I remember throwing out my physics book out the window one time and just crying because I couldn't figure it out. Like literally, that's how bad.
I remember a story that you had put in the first book that you had ever wrote about going inside of the first class and being incredibly intimidated. Like it was just like an auditorium, it was like a room, like a big auditorium, and you sat down, you looked, and you were like, "I'm gonna be lost. I don't know what's gonna happen." That was IIT, right?
That was IIT. So what it was I took my first math course, right, which was and so the guy gets up there, and it's 500 people in the room, right? 500 people in the room. And it's that's already freaking me out, right? I'm just like, and I didn't go to orientation because I forgot I was working. I didn't go to orientation, so this was all new to me. So I get this, and I'm like, oh my God, it's like 500 people. It's like culture shock, right? And I remember the professor takes the podium and he starts writing stuff on the board. And I'm looking at it like it's like from another world, and it's calculus, right? And he's writing dv, dt, all these derivatives. And I'm like, I have no idea what I'm looking at, right? And then I remember there was a guy in front of me. This is the story. The guy in front of me, he had a St. Lawrence Catholic school jacket, and he's doing this. And I'm thinking, good, he doesn't know either, right? And then I hear those words come out of his mouth. Oh no, not this again. And I go, what again? What again? I don't even know what he's writing on the board. Nick, that was the moment I realized I was in trouble. I had to drop all my classes. Like literally, I dropped all my classes and had to retake. I had to go back and take pre-calculus courses, almost like I should have taken these in fourth year of high school and I didn't. And so I had to redo that. And it took me 5.5 years to graduate. Most people do it in 4, maybe 3.5, 4. It took me 5.5 years to graduate. But man, dude, I was determined to get through that engineering, school. So I did it, man. And that was a turning point in my life. That was such a big turning point, Nick, in my life.
Yeah, being at that one, I can imagine. Like, I don't think, a lot of people understand just how hard it is. A lot of people nowadays, because you can easily just go on YouTube and see a trade and do what you want. You can be, whatever you want these days as far as, taking the easy road out. But it's like, people don't really understand that's effort. That's work. That's a lot of shit that you have to do in order to get that degree. And then some people with, snobby ass attitude to say, that's just a paper. You can't tell me how to do. It's like, the fuck it is. Like, do you know how hard it is to achieve this? Like, I think a lot of people don't get a lot of people too much credit for being college educated, and that comes a lot from this new kind of Gen Z perspective. Even Elon Musk had a little quote about that, about people that he would rather hire people without degrees and stuff. It was kind of a long one of the most smartest things he said.
But here's the misunderstood thing about what Elon Musk said, though. If anybody really read what he said,
know this quote, didn't you?
Yeah. And what he said was, he goes, you don't need an engineering degree to work for Tesla, but you have to have an extraordinary skill to work at Tesla. And I'm like, okay, I get what he means. And he's absolutely right. If you can figure out how to do coding, for example, right? And you've reached this extraordinary level where you don't need to go to college. Que Dios te bendiga, God bless you, way to go.
Exactly.
But that's what there was that small qualifier in it. But everybody's like, see, Elon Musk says I don't need a degree. That's not what he said. He said, you don't need a degree if you have I think it was extraordinary ability. So if you have extraordinary ability, then absolutely. In fact, you don't need any degree. And
exactly. That's a lot of that gets lost in the sauce. Look at me. I just kind of butchered that a little bit. But with that too, that kind of leads also, what we were talking about with college, and I know how, difficult that must have been, but being college educated, I'm sure you've probably read way more books out of school than you read in school, because you can't make it to this level and not.
That's actually correct.
Exactly, 100%. You can't make it to this level and not, keep on updating the software. You know what I mean? Yeah. You're just going to be, running on outdated software, so to speak. But, with that and knowing, because you're a whiz also at statistics, figures, and, even like social experiments to say, well, 50% of people are like this or 30% of people are like that. With that kind of mentality, though, do you think that would, does that ever make you stop and feel like I'm in a box right now? That's going to kind of, compartmentalize, so, for lack of better words, my creativity, because I'm like stuck within these boundaries of numbers, so does that ever conflict with that, or does that ever, help more so than it would to be able to use your...
It's a great question you're asking. It's a really good question you're asking, because it's almost like, are you bounded by the things that made you, like the engineering degree? And what I find, what's great about the question is that I remember, Nick, this is going to be interesting. I don't share this much, but I remember when I graduated from college, right? Super happy, man, making like $28,500, like almost $30,000 a year right at the time. Big dough, big stack at the time, big cheese, right? And so 3 years into my job, I realized I don't like engineering. 3 years. And now that was like the hardest thing to come to grips with, because I'm like, dude, I just spent 5.5 years trying to get this degree. 3 years into this mother, and I'm going, I don't want to do this anymore. Right?
Is this the one where you told your boss that you were getting out of there?
No, that's another story. There's a lot of when you said,
my man, I'm just excited. Go ahead, continue.
There's so many. There's so many. It's not a straight line. My life, like anybody else's, it's never a straight line. But I remember I had a moment, right? 3 years into this thing, I'm like, I don't want to do this, and it was hard to accept. This is where your box analogy makes sense, because I'm in this box called an engineering box, and I realize I don't like my box. But I like the money, but I don't like the box, right? And I remember that it was around that time, I always tell people I had like my existential crisis. By that I mean I'm like, who am I? What do I want to do? That whole shit. And I remember that's when I went down the rabbit hole and I started reading everything I could consume on whether it was motivation, philosophy, or everything. I mean, I was like, I'd never really sleep well at night, right? So I used to always get up at like 1 or 2 in the morning, like just habit. And I would read for an hour, then go back to bed. That was my cycle.
Oh, wow.
So I was reading these books on social sciences. I was reading all the psychologists. I was reading stuff on existentialism, all this. I mean, just everything I could get in my hand, because I'm trying to figure this thing out, right? It's like, you're lost, right? You're just trying to figure it out. It's a mess. And all I know is I don't want to do this anymore. And then I started moving around it was Honeywell at the time. We started moving around. And I just bounced from company to company. I became a hard engineer, coding. Then I went over to an application, which is more like putting boxes together. And I moved around quite a bit, different positions within certain companies. It wasn't like I was jumping to a lot of companies. It wasn't until I started getting closer to sales that I go, okay, this I kind of like. It was a little more freedom, because now you can travel. Man. And so as an engineer, I would travel with sales guys, right? Because they didn't understand the product. Technically, I did. So we called it a four-legged sales call. Four-legged means 2 people. We go do a sales call together. So the salesperson would do all the yapping. I would handle all the technical questions, and it was a beautiful existence, right? And so I got to travel the world, right? That was another moment. I should back up, Mick. I got to tell you about this first moment in college. I really got to tell you about it. This broke me. This was like, oh shit, one of those moments, like, oh shit. And that was, so in the hood, right? So we're in Chicago. It was mostly predominantly black and Hispanic, right? And if there was a white person there, that was like our rare spotted owl. Just a few of those. We don't have that many of those, right? And so I always say, you're in this bubble. You're in this bubble. And in the hood bubble, if we can call it the hood bubble, is success is always for people who are not of your color, right? For the white guys and all that stuff, for white people, right?
That's that mantra. That's that.
Yeah.
It's
like
general perception.
Yeah. The world's against us. Everybody's against us. Blah, all that noise, right? Yeah. I get to college, and in that first year I was struggling. I meet a guy named Mike. All right, Mike is white. Mike, turns out that white boy Mike, is poor. To which I said, Mike, how can you be poor? You're white. And I remember he looked at me. He goes, and essentially he said this, are you an idiot? He says, why do you think white people aren't poor? Now, it was an innocent conversation. We were friends, right? We could talk smack to each other. Yeah. But I remember walking away from that conversation, like I felt like, I like to call it the great shattering. I felt like that bubble I was in, somebody just hit it with a hammer, And it just shattered all these lies and illusions. Because most people don't understand that the poorest population in the United States, in terms of quantity, not percentage, the poorest population is white in the United States.
Rural America.
Yeah, most people don't understand that the majority of people who use government assistance by race are whites. Makes sense, right? But that's not what people tell us, right? It's always like black and Hispanics or whatever it may be. And that made me begin to kind of say, okay, what else do I got wrong? You know, and you start questioning things, and you start asking things. And I think one of the biggest things lacking today is we don't have any critical thinking skills, right? We just kind of go with what everybody says we should be doing. And so I'm the guy that says, I don't know. Let me look at, like the Elon Musk thing, right? When I saw that post, I remember I posted, I said, did he really say that? And I'm just like, let me look this up. And I remember reading the whole article as not what he said. And most people don't go that far, right? And so
they don't. They like the article. They like the headline of the article.
They do. It's all clickbait, right? And so, so I learned early on, I said, let me look. You know, I can hate somebody, like I not like somebody, but if they say something about that person, I go, there's no way. I don't even like the guy. LeBron James could say something I don't like. And I'd be like, nah, there's no way that guy would say something like that. And I look it up, and sure enough, they took him out of context or something, right? And so I just use it as an example. He's an all right guy. I'm indifferent to him. I just use it as an example. But it taught me, Nick, to really look behind what people are saying and really say, is that really true? Is that really true? And that began my questioning of everything I learned, and I had to unlearn it, if that makes any sense.
It makes a lot of sense. It does. I'm totally with you 100%. That's kind of a good way to bring it full circle as far as, using your critical thinking as opposed to what you were taught. I can't imagine, how better the nation would be had we learned that in school. Like, had we learned taxes, had we learned, more of the home ownership, had we learned all these certain type of things. But the curriculum itself nowadays, it's just kind of, this arbitrary just mode of thinking. And it's just like, how does that prepare you for life afterwards? And I think the best and greatest experience of, teacher of life is experience. You have to go through these type of things. You had to go through the, that enlightenment, that cultural enlightenment, so to speak, to realize. But that also goes and shows you that, look at the conditions that, you were living in, and look at how, narrow-minded that was, as opposed to now seeing what was going on. Because if it's just, society at that point, that's something to kind of look back and see how more enlightened you are as compared to that now.
Well, you it's like, that saying, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And I think as you get older, I'm a couple of years older than you, right? Just a few years. And
just a couple.
My degree of humbleness increases every year. You know what I mean? Because you realize how much you don't know. And when you realize how much you don't know, it's like there's something called the Dunning-Kruger effect, and that is that people overestimate what they know. In other words, you ever see people who get online and just talk all kinds of smack thinking they know everything? And that's a perfect example of a Dunning-Kruger effect, right? People who just overestimate what they know. And the reality is a lot of things are never binary, black or white. They're usually shades of gray. If you really look at any situation, and that's what I've learned, everything in life is a shade of gray. There's no black or white. You can look at any situation, you can look at any issue that's happening today. And if you really dissect it, you realize it's more complicated than that, right? So I've learned to kind of, and this is kind of just, you start, as you get older, you just start reserving judgment. And the last thing you really start pulling back on judgment. You know how when we're young, like, oh, you're an idiot. That guy, he doesn't, all that stuff. All that stuff goes away because you realize, I don't know what that guy's going through. We all heard the saying, right? Unless you walk a mile in a man's shoes.
I was just going to say, you turn from criticizing to sympathizing.
Yeah, and you just sympathize. You go, I don't know. I'm not in his or her situation, so I'm not going to judge that person. And then when somebody wants to teach you something, you accept it. And so even, when I learn something like, yesterday I was on LinkedIn, and somebody said something. They wrote something, commented on one of my blogs, and I go, damn, I didn't know that. Now, I could have just said that to myself. Damn, I didn't know that, right? Which was true. I did say it to myself and just left it at that. But I actually typed in. I said, what? I said, wow, I just learned something new. I'd never heard of that. Never knew that even existed. Thank you for sharing that valuable information, right? Because there's that Zen saying or whatever it's a saying that says, if you ask a dumb question, you'll be dumb for the moment. But if you don't ask the question, you'll be dumb for the rest of your life. That type of thing.
That's a great way to put it.
That we don't have all the answers, man. So we're just trying to piece this all together. And if I bring it back to the educational piece, I think what's missing is that, as you pointed out already, rightfully so, it's the critical thinking piece, right? That's a big aspect that's missing. I would say the second part of that is, again, something you alluded to, is that, the basic skills for survival are not taught. By that is understanding money, right? So, the show Life or Debt that I have on Spike, right? It talks about money. And it's amazing how people don't even understand interest, compound interest, and things of that nature. Simple stuff, right? They don't understand mortgage, paying off principal, stuff like that. I mean, this is basic stuff that they should really just embed that in us, right? And then the other thing I would say, the third thing, if I may add, is that they don't teach us how to be entrepreneurs. Why is it that these school systems, the way they're still run today, were basically developed during the Industrial Revolution? Machines, right? Machines, physical power. And the reason they put you in school was because mom and dad had to go work at the factory, right? So, and they lined you up, right? And then you did what you were told, right? But we live in a world today where, you don't have to get a job. You can start your own business. Now imagine, especially in the minority community, if you start inculcating people with that, imbuing them with that thought process, say, by the way, there's not just one option, there's two options. One is you can get a job, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Some people just want a gig. That's fine. I've been one of those. But then some people say, you know what, I think I want to do it my way. I want to start my own business. But they don't know how to do it, and they waste a lot of money, and they just simply don't know. But some people, it never even occurs to them that they can start their own business. And so they wind up working for the rest of their lives, for other people. So I think that's a big shame. When I look at schools, I think about, one, critical thinking skills, not there. Two, some of the basic skills just to survive in life are not taught. You learn things that you're not going to remember, like, memorize the Gettysburg Address. Great. I mean, it's important. I can always access it on the internet when I need to look at it. Why do I need to memorize that? I'd rather learn how to either balance a checkbook, what is the house? What is amortization? What is depreciation? What is EBITDA? What is all the stuff that people talk? And that's the stuff, Nikki, that I really had to learn after I got out of college, because then I was college educated, but I was socially inept, I think. And I started reading.
More naive to street smart as you already were, but still had that kind of block.
I had that. You know what I mean? I had that. So one of the things I started doing, true story, is I felt like I was always behind everybody. When I joined the first company, right, I always felt I was a little behind. And then this idea hit me. It's a very simple idea. And that is, I remember people were always reading books. So I'd walk into my boss's office, he has a book. And then I said to myself, you know what? From now on, whatever book they're reading, and by their meeting, I'm not talking about people I say, is that you mean just white people? No. Anybody who's in a position of power, that is, I'm reading what they're reading, right? And so I started reading those books. And man, things began to change, because it was like I can communicate with them at that level. I said, yeah, I read the book too. And then I noticed that little by little, I was surpassing my counterparts, because I was just reading, but I wasn't reading just to show off or anything. I was reading just because I wanted to know. But I realized that reading was power. Knowledge really, when applied, is power. And that changed a lot for me.
I had said the same thing to the girls. Funny that we talk about this to, my daughters, and I was telling them, because we had family time, every now and again. Well, actually every night. I try to do that, from 8:30 to 9 when they go to bed, spend a half hour with them, whether we're watching a show or we're, talking or whatever the case is. I said, today we're going to sit and read. So get your favorite little books, and then we're going to read. So the two oldest, Sally and Delilah, there's 11 and 9. They have their little graphic novels. Me, and I'm reading the book that I'm very into, your book right now. I'll get to it in a second. Okay. But then Avery, she's kind of looking through, and then, I had them read for about 20 minutes, and then the last 10 minutes was us helping Avery, the littler one, to try to read or whatnot. And she's getting her words and whatnot. And I got into this spiel about how I wish that I would have been forced more to read, because not only is reading just you can kind of envision everything in your head, like a lot, it's stereotypical to say, but it actually helps you interpret information way better. Because if you're looking and reading at these words that you've seen before, and your brain is now processed those neurons to be able to let you see what you're interpreting, when you hear this actually like somebody telling you, you're able to get that more easier, and you're able to learn faster. So with that, I used to tell the girls all the time, that's why why reading is so important. When I was a kid growing up, dad would just be like, read this, and then that's all. I'm like, why? And I'm like, are you fucking questioning me, boy? And I'm like, nope, okay, I'll read. Like, I didn't have any kind. What I was.
By the way,
my dad
knowing your
say.
father as I do, I can hear his voice saying that. Yeah.
So it's like I didn't get and then with me, my brain is moving a million miles a second. I want to learn. Why am I doing this, or why? Like I was the type to I wanted to know how the movie was made as opposed to watching the movie. Like behind the scenes stuff always fascinated me. Like I was watching, the behind the scenes stuff to The Matrix for hours and hours. Before, I probably seen that more than I seen the movie. But I was trying to tell them about, reading, and that's how, you're able to interpret information better. And, it was something, amazing for me, to kind of tell them that and to look back to give them perspective, because that's the kind of perspective that I think that, as go full circle again is what, kids need, especially in the curriculum. Also, we had touched on something about with answers and having the answers and, everything that you would need to say. Or I was also wondering, when you were saying that, is it important for, someone in sales to have the right answer or just an answer?
The right answer would be really good. That'd be the right answer, right? I mean, to have an answer. I mean, when you look at selling, everything in life is selling. It really is. If you really, whether you sell a product or service, I tell people, well, you sell an idea. When you're selling your spouse on, hey, let's go out to dinner, that's a sales pitch. I'm sorry, but it is. You're trying to convince your spouse that you need to buy something. That's a sales pitch, right? When you went up to your girlfriend and make her your wife, trust me, that was a sales pitch every single time. And so it's all selling, or, if we could be more gentle about it, great communication skills, right? And so I think, like, for me, what happened, Nicky, is like, I was more of an introvert throughout school. Like, I was not the tough guy. I was the skinny kid, right? So I was never the tough guy, And so, but I was also an introvert. Almost all the way through high school, I was an introvert. And somewhere in college, I don't know what happened. I really don't know what happened. It was in college that I kind of started emerging from that introvert shell. And then when I started working, I started, leaving that shell and became more. And I joined an organization called, and this goes to your point about, communication and talking and having the right answer. I joined an organization called Toastmasters. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the organization, but it's an organization that teaches you how to speak. Right? By the way, if you want to see something really funny, man, just Google Victor Antonio, first Toastmaster speech. I got my Jerry curls and everything, man. It's really wild. Got my flight time suit, man. My double-breasted.
I'm not going to confirm nor deny whether or not I've researched enough to know or seen that. But I know exactly that one. I think that was also the one. Was that the class where you learn about pausing?
That's
pausing.
Correct.
You can say something, and then you can go ahead and go off. You can say this, but then you can pause like that. I've done a little bit of research on you now, my man.
You have done. Well done, man. Well done. Dude. So there I learned how to be a good communicator. And Toastmasters is everywhere, so anybody can join Toastmasters. By the way, there's another perfect example of a skill set that should be taught in schools. So when people go in to do an interview, they know how to communication, really express themselves, right? So you take, for example, what you're doing with your kids, right, which is admirable, right? Take that and then give them the ability to actually communicate, take those ideas that they're reading about, right, and then being able to internalize it, push it through themselves, so to speak, and then verbalize it. Man, that's the 1-2 punch, because when you read, it sounds good up here. You got the concept. It transports you, it transforms you, but it's still up here, right?
Sure.
Being able to kind of spit it out, right, is a whole other thing. It's like, we both like rap music, right? It's the same thing, man. The bars sound good when I'm writing them, right? The bars sound good. You just write them, get the bars out. But it isn't until you jump into your little cipher, man. You realize either how weak or strong it is, and then you realize
your flow's not there. Your delivery is all jacked up.
Yeah, the emphasis is on the wrong word, the wrong syllable. It's almost the same thing. So you can read, but the ability to be able to communicate those ideas is where it really comes into play. And so in sales, I think it's better to have the right idea. And if you don't know, just say you don't know. But I and so I always tell people that when you're communicating with people, they can sense within like microseconds whether you're BSing them or not. I mean, I can ask the person a question they don't expect, and they'll go, yeah. And just that, yeah. I go, he doesn't know. He doesn't know. And you become very good at it after a while. When you're in sales for a while, you can just, your BS. First of all, if you're from the hood, you got a good BS meter already. But when you start Yeah, when you start kind of really focusing in on facial expressions and then especially tone and body language, how people turn on me, the stuff I see how people do is just hilarious because it's like I'm watching them and I go, I'm reading you, Matt. And they don't even know I'm reading them. And they can say
100%.
things. It's really fascinating. But anyway, so all that to say is
Why do you think I was so nervous about this? I know all of that is happening right now.
all that, you're like, you know, when you're playing piano, there's a moment when your brain splits. In other words, because you start chording with your same hand, right? The same way. But then, then all of a sudden you figure I can chord with this one and solo with this one. You can do two things at one time. Your brain goes, splits. When you know your content, like right now you're going through, this is episode number 10, for example. Let's say by the time you get to episode number 50, I don't know, maybe like 20 for you probably because you're a fast learner. By the time you get to 20, something's going to go, here's what's going to happen to your brain. You're going to be able to have the conversation, but then the other part of the brain is going to have this, almost like this awareness of what's going on in the conversation. And now you're able to say, okay, I need to shift the questions or the conversation or my tone, my speed, velocity. All that'll happen eventually, and you'll feel that. It may not mean a lot right now, but when it happens to you, just kind of just, it happened. It happened to my brain.
Yeah, split. Exactly. I'm gonna let you know that 100%. I think there's certain little instances where I've noticed that, especially like here doing the show. I've been a better communicator. Like I've also tried to implement that in relationships. So it's like if I'm able to have good communication, I like to lead by example. So if I see if I say someone or giving someone advice on relationship or whatever the case is, and they're like, well, our communication's messed up, what would you suggest? It's just like, okay, when she tells you about her day, ask her 3 questions. This is like, okay, what's that gonna do? Like, ask 3 questions. Just be like, honey, how was your day? She was like, oh, it was good. Barb was messing up at the office again. What did she mess up on? Oh, such and such and such, and this happened. It was like, okay, well, is she gonna get in trouble for that, or she's not going to? Well, we don't know what's gonna happen. The boss might reprimand, and be like, oh, okay. She's a shitty communicator if she's not picking up on that and giving you questions. Be like, well, how was your day? Or how was that? Right. But instead of judging her, tell her, like, you see what I just did for you? 3 quick little questions. I want to be interested and ask about my day too. Ask me, not that aggressive, but, I know, as far as also communication with us. And when you were saying that there's not a good, enough curriculum for that in school, I think that they would frown upon a lot of how Puerto Ricans talk because we talk with our hands, we talk with our eyes. I noticed that like watching a lot of your talks or whatnot. And then, I have that in my my videos too. I'm like, I talk with my hands and I do all this. I would wonder if that's like intimidating for other people to see that.
I've learned, I've gotten so many compliments on my gesturing and my facial expressions, like too many. Because it says, when you're talking, it's like your hands match what's going on. You're telling the story, right? I'll say, you start at A, you move to B, you move to C. That's how it works. It's a real easy flow. Just like that, simple. And then I would practice these gestures. Like I walk around, when I got a new part of a speech that I got to work on, I walk around the house. Shelly, my wife, just ignores me. She's like, he's practicing. And I'll walk and I'll try to find the right gesture. So for example, if I'm gonna say time, right? Just because it's the nick of time, right? I mean, do I do this, right? Do I do this? Or what do I do? Do I go time like that? What do I do that makes sense in that story? And so I work out my gestures ahead of time because they make a lot of sense when you're telling a story. And so I think being animated or of an animated culture like Italian or Puerto Rican, I think it's a good thing. I think if you're just doing the same gesture like this, it will never work. If you're just doing one gesture, it's not going to work. But it's okay to tell a story with your hands and your face. It all adds to the context of whatever you're trying to communicate.
I agree 100%. I also think that it goes against the norm of what a lot of people are taught about communication. So if you're at a job interview or something like that, and you're taught to kind of have your posture up, you're kind of taught to sit down, everything how it goes. But when somebody sees something different that they're not, it goes against the norm. They see, he's doing this or he's doing that. Dude, that's already automatic.
I got to interject, Matt. Do you know what the biggest mistake in interviews are? The biggest mistake. Dude, I'm about to get somebody a job right now. I'm about to help somebody get a job. Listen to me. Like, lean into the screen if you're watching this. Just lean in. Just listen to me. I'm telling you how to get the job. Here's what happens. People go in, right? They look nice. They got the right posture. They got the nice, whatever, the hair did, the makeup did, everything did just right? Whatever it may be. And then the interviewer starts asking them questions. So tell me, why do you feel qualified for this job? And they go, well, I really feel that I can contribute to blah, blah, blah. That's all they hear, right? Because the last 10 people said the same thing. So here's all you have to do to win at a job interview. I said, when they start out, I said, what made you interested in this job? You say, then you just immediately, you take control of the conversation by just simply asking questions. He says, well, I said, there are several things. And you could give them something like one being that it's a highly rated company, which is interesting. But can I ask you a question? Just do that. And they're going to go on, right? He said, because now imagine if you view yourself as a prized item to be had. Imagine that you go in there not begging for a job, but having an equal conversation and saying, I don't even know if I want this job. I got questions. Let me ask you a couple of questions. Like, for example, what role would I be playing with this? So in that role, can I ask you a question? Why did the last person leave this position? And what has changed in that position, right? Because now they're like, oh shit. They're like, now
the lens is on them now.
Because it's almost like a spotlight. Imagine that like two people talking, there's a spotlight right above you, right? Your job is to keep the spotlight on them. And here's what's going to happen. They're going to do most of the talking because they got to come up with answers now. And at the end of that conversation, they're going to say, that was a great conversation. You know why? Because they did most of the talking. And you just kept asking great questions. You almost just kept nudging the conversation with another question. So they'll say something like, well, the last person decided that it was time for them to move on to something. I said, well, what are things that person didn't do that you would like me to do in this job for me to be successful? Blah, blah, blah. Or how about this one? I said, how do you define success in this position and how do you measure it? Because that's how I would want to know how I'm going to be measured. How would you do that? You're going to freak them out, right? Because now you're saying, I don't know. I don't know if I want this job. Well, tell me, what do I need to be doing? And then all of a sudden, the tone changes. And they view you not as superior to inferior. They view you as having a peer-to-peer conversation, which is what you want. And if you can just change that dynamic, now you got to have good questions to ask, by the way. But if you can change that dynamic, you will stand out like that.
100%. I agree 100%.
I had to insert that. It was so good because it's one of my pet peeves. Like, stop going in there begging for a job and go in there looking for a career.
I have a friend of mine who she's going to be working at a law firm. This is recently, like today I spoke to her and congratulated her, like, it's a good job. And she was like, I'm glad about the things that you had told me. I gave her, she was like, I'm going nervous. I was just like, don't be nervous and remember these 3 things. 1, they need you. You need a job, but remember that you're in there because you're applying for a position that they need. Number 2, if they say no, you're in the exact same place that you are now, still with a job and still looking for one, and you got, you're confident enough to be able to have one. And 3, remember, you're interviewing them as well. This is not just an opportunity for them, it's an opportunity for you. So don't go in there thinking that they're smarter than you or you're smarter than them. And also keep your answers short. Expound on your answers in case you need to, but as far as anything else, just keep it short and sweet. And then also ask good questions. But I didn't tell her that, the last part, ask good questions. But, asking good questions is the harder part. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think if you just shift that perspective, and I think people know that deep down inside, but they're afraid to execute on it. By that I mean, they know that they're valuable, but they're so I don't want to say desperate, but they're so thirsty for a job, right? That they compromise.
Straight Chicago word right there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, they compromise who they are. And by that I mean this: they go in there and you lose yourself because you try to be what you think they want you to be. And the reality is you have to figure out how to be yourself. And for me, Nicky, in the speaking business, it was when I started speaking my way and not the way I was taught at Toastmasters. Toastmasters taught me the basics, the rules of speaking. And then I said, it's not working for me. I got to start bending some of these rules to make it work for me. And when I started bending them and just doing it my way, man, my speaking career just took off because of that. And it takes a lot of courage to kind of just say, you know what, screw that, I'm doing it my way. And I think
that's what we were talking about being compartmentalized inside of one, arbitrary way of thinking as opposed to using creativity. So, yeah, wow.
Yeah. And I think being able to do that, it requires, again, a lot of courage and a lot of confidence to do that. A lot of people don't have that. But I think if people realize how many times, like, man, I've screwed up so many times. Like I got a list, bro. I got a list. I've said the wrong things. I've done the wrong things. I did this when I should have done that. I went left when I should have gone right. I've made so many mistakes. The biggest difference is and I learned this from, it was a book called Learned Optimism. It was a guy by the name of Dr. Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania. And he talked about something called the Self-Explanatory Style. Sounds complicated. It's not. He says it's how we say, what we say to ourselves when confronted with adversity that will determine whether you're successful or not. And here's what he said. A pessimist, when something bad happens, like you got fired or you didn't get the job. You went to the interview, you didn't get the job, right? You go, I suck, I'm an idiot. You take it personal. Or you say something permanent. No matter what I try, things will never change. No matter where I go, things will never change. That's what a pessimist does. The optimist will say, well, job wasn't for me. What else? Let's go look at something else. Totally doesn't take it personally. Just say, you're lost. I'll just find something that really fits me. Nothing's permanent because they always say, well, if that didn't work out, there's always another opportunity. They got a mentality of abundance. And I've always loved that because I think that's where people get hurt. Your greatest enemy is not from without, it is from within. It is that self-talk, those little moments you have when you're all by yourself, nobody's around. You're sitting in the kitchen table, just having a cup of coffee, whatever it may be, or you're sitting on the sofa just like zoning out, binge watching something and just blank out. You're not even watching, and you have these moments. And it's in those moments when you're thinking to yourself, I'm an idiot, I suck, I'm not good at this, I'll never be able to. And you start comparing yourself to other people, you really start getting, down on yourself. And when I read that book, he highlighted for me that self-talk is something you need to pay attention to. Like in the past, if you'd told me that, I'd be like, yeah, whatever, Victor, whatever. Now I'm like, okay, what did I just say to myself? I go, what did I just say to myself? And to me, there's always something else. So if you take anything from that, it's like, really monitor what you say to yourself, man, because it undermines your success. And by the way, your
100%.
friends and family are not going to support you all the time. So if they're not supporting you, by the way, it's great if they are, but if they're not, you have to be your only supporter. You got to be, don't be delusional, go, I'm the greatest. No, you're not. You're working hard, right? That's how you talk to yourself. No, I'm not the greatest. But man, I try real hard. And if it's not this opportunity, I'll find another opportunity. What do I have to learn? I'll figure it out. Let's do this. So it's all about the work, man, still.
100%. People will conflict that, exactly what you said, to say, don't say that I'm the greatest and say that I'm working hard. They would conflict that as, because I know you're not a person too much that does affirmations, right? You're more of a realist.
Affirmations.
Exactly.
By the way, affirmations make no sense, Nicky, because you're lying to yourself.
Exactly. It's like you can't tell yourself like, okay, I'm gonna go and be the greatest basketball player alive, and you're 4'2". Like you don't affirm that. You know what I mean? Like affirm something more realistic, but also stay within the realm of shooting for the stars. So I agree with you 100% as far as with the affirmations and that aspect. Yeah. But it's true. It's like you have to kind of stay within reality and stay within your realm, so to speak. But no,
that first when you had stay within reality. It's a great phrase, right? You got to look at reality and says what is realistic, and then you say that, people go, well, Victor, you're being negative because you're talking about being realistic. Because no, I'm not. I'm seeing reality for what it is. I'm not putting a positive or negative spin on it. I'm saying that's reality. It's almost like if you see a mountain, you can't go, that's not a mountain, that's a hill. No, damn it, that's a mountain, right? We can argue about how big a mountain or hill should be, but that's a mountain. It's going to be hard to climb over that thing. And so I hear one of the things I look for, Nicky, that really helped me overcome any obstacles. There's a saying that says, obstacles are those things you see when you take your eyes off your goal, right? Obstacles are those things you see when you take your eyes off the goal. And what I learned early on was always seek social proof. Here's what I mean. If somebody else is doing it, there's a pretty good chance you can do it also. Right?
Very
so
true.
When I went into the speaking business, I go, can anybody really make money at this? And then I started researching and finding other people, and I'm like, well, damn, they're making a lot of money. And that to me, like social proof, that's reality. Now, part of that reality is goes, well, I'm not them, so I can't make that much money, right? And so all of a sudden, I go, what do I need? That was the key question I asked. What do I need to do to get there? And I remember my guy was Zig Ziglar, the sales trainer, right? The speaker. I mean, he was making he would do about, I think he was earning about $60,000 to $75,000 a keynote for 45 minutes to an hour.
Jeez.
That was the hourly rate, right? And I'm like, well, damn, if he could do it. Now, I'm not saying I could get there, because this guy was like, this guy was at the top of his game. I go, but man, if I can get half of that, which is always my rule, if I can do half of half, is that still good? Half of half was really good. And so then I started going, what did he do? Wrote a book. Guess what I had to do, Nikki? Write a book. He had a website. Built the website. Video. Need video. And again, and I'm giving you the simple version of that, but just to write the book, just to get the video, just to get a website going, it cost me so much time, money, effort, sweat, and a couple of tears in between to get that all right.
I could imagine.
But I knew obstacles are those things you see when you take your eye off the go. And my eye was fixed on the go. I want to be on the platform. I want to speak. I just got to figure this damn thing out.
100%. Wow. No, that's a great model to have too. I was looking at other also sales sales, not gurus. To me you're an expert. There's certain gurus and there's experts. Well, there's people that know what they're doing and there's other people that that are just kind of like in the mix. I was also seeing a lot of people that I kind of admire in the same realm that you do. There's a Gary V, but he's like, he has this very newish, like new kind of, approach. Well, it's not too new, but it's just more,
Different style,
what's
totally.
the word? More aggressive.
Yeah, man.
Kind of way of doing things. You're more the Jay-Z type of way. I'm going to smooth this in, but I'm going to also put that over your head. I'm going to let you see more so what it is that you need to know. And then if you want to buy, you can buy. But if not, this is what you should be. It's like it gives me that vibe. Then there's Pat Bev David. I don't know if you know who that. I'm sure you know who Patrick Bev David is.
Valuetainment.
And Valuetainment. It's just it's gotten to the point where I've started shifting a little bit more away from Joe Rogan as far as his podcast, and shifting more towards yours and more towards him.
Right.
The thing that works with him to me a lot too is because he's like diverse and whatnot. But when I see those three different ones to me, because it's like I hold all three of you in a high esteem, and you are very much on that exact same level to me as them, and so are the hundreds of thousands of people that subscribe to you. Also, they believe the same thing. Just to let you know. But what do you see as far as a difference between your style and how they do certain things?
This gets back to the point of how they say in life you should have blinders on? I disagree. I think you should have blinders. Here's why. Just totally breaking paradigms here, right? Just going the opposite way. Because what happens
for sure.
is that, there's a famous race of the guy who ran the 4-minute mile, and what happened, he was racing against another guy, and the other guy turned to see where he was at, and then the guy shot right past him, right? And he wins the race, right? Look up the Roger Bannister and Landy race, and you'll figure it out. And there's a statue of the guy doing this. There's actually a statue of the guy doing this, and the guy zipping past him, right? And the thing is, just by him turning, he lost like a fraction of a second, and it was enough for the other guy to win by a fraction of a second. What I think happens, Nick, is that, and this is where the blinder piece comes out, is that we look at other people and what they're doing. And it's okay to observe what they're doing and go, that's interesting. I kind of like that. That's pretty good. But it's not you. We get back to, it's not you. It's not your, you got to be brave to say, that's not me. And so you look at a Gary Vaynerchuk, love his content. Gary V was my inspiration to get into video. I read his book, Crushing It, and he was like, all in. He was doing something called Wine Library TV at the time where he was talking about wines. I don't know if you know that history of him. He started up.
Oh, yeah, for sure. He's a big wine
Yeah, his
guy.
father owned a wine store, and
Owned
so he started
vineyards.
doing this thing called Wine Right. And so then he wrote a book called Crushing It, how he crushed it. And he was like, go all in on video. And this is like 2008, right? A little while back. And so I said, Gary Vee said it, I'm in. And literally that book was the one that says, go video, back in 2008. And that's when I started building the channel. And so he has a style where he's just dropping F-bombs like it's nothing, like it's forever. I've seen people try to, not even emulate, copy his style. And it doesn't work because it's not them.
Of course not.
Gary is Gary.
Because we see what you're trying to do.
There's only one of those, right? You look at a David Patrick Betts. I think David Patrick Betts. God,
Patrick Bet David.
Yeah, Patrick Bet David, right? Patrick Bet David. And he's even changed his podcast now. I don't know if you see, he's got a whole desk thing with a bunch of black boxes, the whole thing. And I actually like his better because he's all over the place. He's like a Joe Rogan with a tie. Do you know what I mean? And he does these different shows with different, just different topics, right? He's interviewed mafia people to Jordan Peterson, wrote the 12 Rules of Life. I mean, so he's got the range.
Bodybuilders to artists, rappers and stuff.
So it's the same thing. So it's like it's like let's use rap music or any type of music. It's like you just don't want to. You want to listen to somebody's style. So that's pretty cool, but that's just not me. I can't flow that way, right? Like I just can't do it. Like still one of my favorite rappers, and this is I'm gonna date myself, but I'm gonna tell you why. You know how they always do? Who are your top 5 rappers? I said I'm just my favorite rapper. Here it is, Nikki, because nobody would ever guess this guy would be my favorite rapper, and it is Heavy D. I love Heavy D. Let me tell you why.
Really?
I've never really listened to Heavy D. First of all, let me tell you what I love about Heavy D. Listen to his music.
The overweight love is in the house.
Yeah, the overweight love. I got nothing but love for you, baby. You know, really, I mean, he's got some great lyrics, but what I love about Heavy D, I mean, there's a lot of great rappers, of course, but what I've always loved about him was like his energy and his bouncy. Dude, he's having fun, man. Do you know what I mean? He's like, when you listen to Heavy D, you can't help but smell. Yeah, whatever that is, right? And so when I listen to Heavy D, it's like it puts me in a good mood because it's not about it's like I don't want to drop the bad words here, but I'm tired of hearing that. I'm tired of hearing about Cash Money, man. I love early Cash Money. I like the Hot Boys actually when they were early on, Lil Wayne back in the day, Cash Money. I like that.
Yeah.
Early Juvenile stuff I love that stuff, but there's something about Heavy D that just puts me in a good mood when I listen to Heavy D because he's all about having a party. And if you really listen to his lyrics, they're very clever lyrics, and that's why I consider him my favorite rapper. I know. Everybody's like Eminem, whatever.
No, but you have that one. You have that one. I understand
completely. But I think getting back to style, when you look at these different speakers, I think it's finding your style, Nikki. It's easier said than done. It's easier said because you're afraid to reveal yourself, right? Because we all have two selves, right? Like a Janus mask, right? You ever see those masks? Sure. Face facing that way, face. It's a Janus mask, right? And one is towards society, one is the one people don't see, right? And I think people are afraid to let people see the other side. And I think, again, I keep using the word courage because I know what it takes to kind of go, you know what? Here's who I am, And by the way, I say that with a little asterisk on the bottom. Don't be a dick. Just because you're be who you are, be your personality, but be respectful to the public. But I think if you let people see who you are and you're brave enough to do that, and you're respectful, people will accept you. But I think people have a hard time doing that.
Because I think they look at that much. Sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
They look at that they see what's worked. They see what's worked and they say, well, this happened and he's done that, so maybe I can do the same thing. So nobody wants to be themselves anymore. That's what I feel about hip hop these days. If not even to get into a long rant or whatnot, but because I have some questions about the book that I'm super into. But I see the thing.
Keep going because I love the point you're making. It's a great point you're making. Go ahead.
It's the whole thing about hip hop today, and it was first genre I fell in love with, first thing I started doing, music that I've loved, making beats and doing everything. But what I'm noticing now is like it's not art anymore. Because to take it for an example, for a guy with kids, if my daughter comes up to me and she puts a piece of paper on top of another painting and she draws it and it's probably a shittier version. My daughter's, the youngest one's 5, and she says, "Look, Dad, this is an artist. I'm an artist." I would say, well, you're not an artist. You're being artistic, but you're not an artist. Right. An artist to me is creativity. An artist to me is like, crafting something. The new talent is attention. It's attention. It's who can garnish the most attention, and what is garnishing what is gathering the most attention. It's the same blueprint, the same 808 blueprint that's been going on and on for the past 15 years. And everybody wants to say they're being original or doing this or doing that, but I don't think that that's what's happening. Everybody's looking at the idea, well, this worked, so let me do the same thing. Also, it's just at a certain frequency where it's dumbing down everybody, and it's very simple. You notice there's no more third verses in rap anymore. It's only totally, 2. They want you in and out.
Yeah, they're first of all, everybody's biting each other's style, right? That's the first thing.
The best way to put it.
Yeah, and then also the lyrics are like, there's I'm not saying that you need to, be an intellectual with high IQ, but some of the lyrics are so dumb and they keep repeating the same thing. It's like there's no storyline.
It's buzzwords.
Yeah, they're buzzwords.
They're all the same buzzwords.
Have you ever listened to and this is totally dating myself, like Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5 when they did the
Furious 5.
If you by the way, listen to New York, New York. It's like New York, big city of dreams, but everything in New York isn't always what it seems.
New York
You might
ain't
be
always
fooled
what it
if you come
seems.
from out of town, but I'm down by law. And I remember that way. A mother cries and a baby dies because a tear falls from the doctor's eyes. Because in this room and on this day, the good Lord hath giveth and taketh away. And then he goes out and he tells a story how about the lady putting the baby in the garbage pail, because she couldn't take care of it. And you hear these stories from the hood. And then he goes back to New York, big city of dreams, but everything in New York isn't always what it seems. And it's like you were really living through their experience, through their lyrics, what was going on. It was a good representation. One could say that it was after, like, I think the not to get into the genre of rap too much, but I think after the genre of gangster rap, because I think when you had NWA, Ice-T and some of those guys coming through, these guys were really trying to tell you what was going on in the hood, right? There was some real reflection in that music of what was going on. Now, I think the Cash Money Boys ruined it because it's bling bling, right? And not everybody lives bling bling, and everybody's trying to emulate the bling bling. And I think if they look at the history of rap, they're going to see that there's like a fissure, like a big line that you draw between where gangster rap was really trying to tell you what was going on in the street, and then Cash Money came in, and then it became, I call it, it's pretty rap where everything's bling, everybody's got the big cars, everybody's got to show the jewelry, the whole thing, which is so unrealistic.
KRS-One has a great analogy for that. He calls it, there's the analogy for diamonds is ice. So he calls it the ice age, where there's no vegetation growing, there's no real oxygen, there's no room for growth.
You would expect that from
the ice age.
KRS-One.
Right? Of course it would be KRS-One to say
knowledge reigns supreme. Knowledge reigns supreme.
Yeah. I can rant on and on about that one. Yeah. I was but like getting into that more so when I was talking when bringing up Pat Bev David and Gary Vee and you is the salesman, the what we look at as the one that we want to see us, kind of, sell me something. Everybody kind of has something to sell, but reading this book, and it's not a newer book, but going through the couple books that I have.
Which book are you reading?
Sales Ex Machina. This book has gotten me completely like in a whole nother realm. Yeah. Like I'm in the beginning, I'm listening, I'm reading it, and I'm like immediately drawn in. I am not a reader. For anybody that knows me, I am not a reader.
By the way, you picked a hard book to read, man. That's a hard book I wrote. I wrote it with another guy.
Oh no, I'm into it like a fish in water. I gravitated right towards that. You know what I mean? That's Earth and I'm the moon and I'm circulating around it. My whole thing is I'm into it and I'm looking at it and I'm just like, because I'm already knowing, the whole. I see it's a sales. It's I forget the whole name. It's Sales Ex Machina. And what's the subpart?
Yeah, how artificial intelligence is changing the world of selling.
How artificial intelligence is changing the world of selling. And right then and there, I was like, I'm listening, but it's true. Like I'm reading this, and I'm going into it, and I'm seeing like the scenarios, and I'm seeing and shout out to the guy that you that wrote it with you too.
By the way, just a side story for you. Dr. James Anderson. He was like my mentor when
Anderson. Yeah.
When I had when I was in when I graduated from college, before I graduated, I did an internship at Honeywell, and he was like my mentor. He guided me. The guy had like 5 degrees, 2 bachelors, 2 masters, and a doctorate, all engineering degrees. Just a beast, right? But he played congas. There's a story here. I want to make sure I get the story to you. He played congas, right? Just 3 congas. He's a bad dude. Your father and Gugu knew him. And he was actually my wedding. Yeah. They actually played conga. They would go to where was it? It was in Minnetonka. And they would just lay out and they would just play out there. And so, James Anderson was like,
no way.
Yeah, man. He's half black, half Cuban, and half white. And the Cuban side just comes out once in a while. So that's why his last name is Anderson, because it's just he's like a Cuban with green eyes. It's really interesting. But he was into
that's amazing.
Yeah, he was into the funk genre and the conga genre, and knew how to play salsa. Could play almost any rhythm on it. And I remember your father loved playing with him. They would just jam out.
Really?
They would just jam out, man. So we had him over the house one time. Your father came over, and I think they just jammed out one time in the backyard. Yeah. So
Oh,
James
that's
Anderson.
awesome. My dad kind of threw that on me too. Showed me how to play congas, at a very
Yeah,
early
man.
age.
Yeah.
But thinking about you guys and making that book, like what was really I know engineering is in your background, and doing all the stuff that you were doing. I'm sure you've messed with transistors. I'm sure you've messed with all of that crazy stuff, and you've already got like a broad idea of kind of the tech side of a lot of that. But like, what kind of motivated you to do that book? I mean, because I can tell you personally that when I saw this and when I saw the cover, or like where I saw the name to it, the first thing immediately was first thing immediately was Amazon. I was watching another interview of yours too that I kind of wanted to bring up in this one, where you see but you guys just spoke about how it's a good sales point to have whatever it is that they're selling, but at the bottom of it, it's people also have bought this. So when I read, or while reading and saw sales ex machina and AI taking over sales, will it do? It's like that to me. Is it going to cut out the middleman of the salesman? Is it going to be is it going to replace that person? Because now you can go on Facebook. You're not even you're like, how the hell does Google know exactly what I'm thinking about? I did need this. I must have needed this. So you think with that AI is getting that sophisticated, is it going to cut out the middleman, the sales guy? Or, I mean, how, okay, for lack of better words, because we're on my show, how fucked do you think we are as far as AI and taking over everything?
All right. So to give the audience some context, right? So the book is called Sales Ex Machina. Ex Machina means from the machine, right? So sales from the machine. And the backstory is that when I was doing my internship at Honeywell, I was working on a torpedo system. If you saw the movie The Hunt for Red October, that was a Mach 46 torpedo. James was working on that torpedo system, and he was working on something called an expert system, which is like early AI. So this is like way back, right? And so I learned about expert systems, early AI, from James. By the way, it sounds complicated, but here's how it goes. Expert systems means you have to write all the rules in, right? Okay, if it goes left, do this. If it goes right, do this. If it goes that, if it turns left, you write all the rules.
Algorithms, pretty much.
Right, and that algorithm, but has to be written out, right? That algorithm, that programming has to be written out, and it becomes not scalable because you have to write all this stuff out. You can't imagine all the rules, right? If you can imagine,
math, so much of that.
You just can't imagine all the rules that you have to write. There's too many different scenarios. If you're hitting a torpedo underwater and it goes into an environment, there's no way you can program it to cruise through the environment and know all the rules, like mountain, avoid that. Hit a whale, don't do that. That stuff, right? And so then expert systems became too cumbersome. By that I mean it's just too much programming. People go, it's just too much work. You can't do this, right?
Sure.
This is fast forward. I'm in Seoul, Korea, doing a presentation, right? And the guy, it was for a big healthcare company, and I remember the guy took me down to his call center, a bunch of people calling, hey, want insurance? Hey, want insurance? And what they did is they implemented AI. Again, this artificial intelligence, here's what it did, Nikki. What it did was it could listen to our conversation like we're having right now, based on tone, word, velocity, inflection, usage of words, types of questions you ask, all that stuff. The algorithm could now determine whether Nikki was going to buy or not. And it would tell you that, or it would tell you what to ask. So now the machine was programming. So what's happened in the 20, 30 years when we started with expert systems to now AI is that storage is bigger now, right? So now, remember back then, if you had 4 megabytes, that was a lot. Today, it's nothing. You got terabytes, you're gonna have zettabytes and so forth, right? Processing power is increased, right? So processing power is increased, storage is increased, and the amount of data we're collecting, your phone is spewing data, even at this very moment, right? Everything's spewing data. So now they took all that data, processing power, storage, and now an algorithm could look at, I'll say, I don't know, let's just exaggerate, 100,000 variables. 100,000 variables. And the machine can program itself. No longer do you have to write the rules in. The machine does it. It uses some type of process. I'm going to keep it simple. It uses the processing power to actually write its own brain. And
it's thinking.
It's thinking.
Essentially.
And so now let's go back to the Amazon example you mentioned that I talk about in the book. What happens is, based on what you've looked at in the past, because they're tracking everything. If you don't think they're tracking everything, they are. They're tracking
100%.
everything. And they'll talk about how the data is anonymized, like they don't have your name. They're tracking you. And so everything's being tracked. So let's say you hit 100 websites in a month. Let's say 200 websites, so exact. They can track even like your scrolling speed, like when you scroll on a page, how fast you scroll, because that's a variable. That determines, okay, because as soon as you slow down,
If he's
they
going
go,
fast, then he's not interested. If he's going slow,
Right.
he is interested.
They even, when you mouse over something and you stay there, they grab that variable as well. He moused on that thing, right? So they got that as well. If you watch a video, how much of the video did you watch? What was in that video? Because now it can actually go in there and see what you actually watched, right? Because it can actually take out a clip and actually look at what you actually watched. And then it'll pull data from that clip that you watched. So now they know you watched that piece of data. This goes on and on. I mean, we can go all day. If you have a Nest product in your house, it's collecting data on you, right? It tells you when you turn it on, when you turn it off, when you leave the house, when you do this. Your car is also emitting data, right? So if you're driving it around, boom, it's emitting data. All the data is being collected, right? That was this big data cluster. So now, let's say in one day, I collect 30,000 points on you, 30,000 points of information. It begins to come, that's 30,000. That's a lot, man, right? Old school, you couldn't do anything with that processing, right? Today, like nothing. Right? So now that's just one day. Now they take a whole year, 2 years, 3 years, and they pull all this data, and after a while they got your profile. You go on Amazon, they're collecting all the data. Everything you scrolled on, everything you clicked on, everything you saved, looked at later, whatever it may be. That's why people who bought this also bought what? That's a recommendation engine, right? It recommends what you want to do next. But then you'll see off to the side, it'll start recommending other things because it already knows what you've been looking at. And these are not like basic cookies. You know how cookies follow you from web page to web page? It's not that.
Right.
This is beyond that. This is like, they know, Nikki. Even on your phone, there's so many things they collect on your phone. My favorite data point was one for Uber. Uber figured out that if you're running out of battery on your phone, you will pay a higher fare. Why? Because you're desperate to get to where you need to get to so you can get a charge on. I mean, just
That's crazy.
There's one example. I don't know if you got to it, but it was an example with a lady at Target, really a teenager at Target. Father complains.
No, I haven't got that far
Okay,
yet.
so the father goes to Target. His daughter's like 15, 16 years old. Father goes to Target. He says, why? And talks, I want to see the manager at Target. This is actually in Minneapolis, by the way. And says to the manager, said, why are you sending my daughter information on being a young mother and stuff like that, right? And he goes, this is inappropriate. You need to stop doing that. And the manager's like apologizing profusely, like, we don't know. I don't know. We'll have to check. You really apologize. He calls like a month later. Again, the manager calls the father a month later to make sure that he's not receiving the information. And then the father has to confess that she was pregnant. See, based on what she was buying, all the things she was picking, the algorithm, the programming, actually could determine if that person was pregnant or not. Because we change our habits, we change our clothes, right? They can tell, like if somebody has diabetes, for example, based on what products you buy. What they found is that because in some cases your skin gets more itchier, so you start switching soaps more often. So in other words, you bought brand A one week, then you bought brand C, then you brought brand D. They go, okay, something's wrong here. And they take all the other data points, everything else you're buying. Like when you shop and you got the shopping cart full of, let's say, 50 items, those are all data points. And they're actually looking not only at the 50 items you bought, but they're also looking at what combination you're buying them in. And they store that. When you come back again, they look at it again, and they figure out what combinations you're buying, so forth and so on. Anyway, not to get too deep into this, but to answer your question, what's happening now is that the salesperson is now, for what they call the simple sale, little simple sales, is becoming obsolete. I don't need you. I mean, I can buy a car online now. I don't need a car salesman. I can go to Carvana, right? I can go to CarMax. Don't even put the car in front of my house so I can just drive it around, right? So now, if you are selling a simple product, then the answer is you're right. You're screwed. But if you're selling more complex product, like if I said, hey, I'm selling how to build a studio, no AI is going to take care of that. Because you need somebody to come in and look at your room, go, all right, here's how we're going to set the studio. Those people who have those specialized skills will always be around. Those people who have expert advice will always be around. But anybody who does the simple, mundane stuff, selling, talking to people, they're going to be gone. I mean, real estate agents are almost on their way out. I think in the long run, you don't need a real estate agent.
Do you think that that's going to be like a dead profession here soon?
There's a
Because I
lot
know
of
that in
professions that are
sales,
dying. We're
I was just going to ask, what do you think the top 3 professions you might believe that could be, non-existent here in the next 10 years?
anything that has to do with retail is going to go out the door. Malls are dying. Malls are dying because people are going online. No longer do I have to go to a mall and go, can't find what I want. Just go on Amazon. It delivers it within 24 hours. So all of a sudden,
How about that person that stickler that's like, I need to try on my shoes in order, or I need to try on my pants just so I can know that it fits.
But you're finding people now, and watch what's coming. They're going to get these. You've seen these mirrors already, right? Where you just stand there and it'll rotate around you, or you'll rotate and it'll get your measurements. Design your clothes, send it to you, and if you don't like it, they'll give you. You just send it right back. The ability to send things back now is so easy. It wasn't like in the old days. It was like, oh my God, I gotta go find a box. I gotta do it. No, it's like send it back. Amazon doesn't even question it. Why? Because they realize that if they make it easy for you to send it back, you're going to buy more. So they're thinking long game. Mm-hmm. They're thinking long game. And so what's happening now is all that stuff is going away. So I think that a lot of people who are coming up right now, if you're not in a position getting a job where it's something that's specialized, you're going to have a hard time in the future. Really.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
I can imagine. I mean, if you have to be in a central park.
Because, by the way,
yeah,
tie it all the way to the back.
But
the school system still is set up for the Industrial Revolution. We've moved into the information age, and now we're moving into the age of AI, and we're still in the Industrial Revolution.
Still stuck.
We've stopped.
So do you think a different, maybe instead of these, these same professors and these same kind of methods of teaching or whatnot, do you think maybe it should be, instead of, young entrepreneurs, it should be, more young educators that are going out there? Because we've kind of figured that, a lot of these teachers are just in there for a check and they're really not teaching shit anyway. So, I mean, do you feel like there could be a different method for that?
I think, I don't know what the answer is, but I know that there's a foundational curriculum that has to be taught. Excuse me. You have to know math, right? You have to know basic things. But beyond the basic things, it's like the people that teach in college, for example, have never had a real job. They've been in academia all their life. That's one of the biggest problems, is that they've always been professors. As you say, they're collecting a paycheck. I believe that they're passionate about what they're doing, what they're teaching, but they haven't gone out in the market and had their asses handed to them to say that's real experience. I rather listen to a professor who says, man, let me just tell you how I got my ass handed to me 20 times. But I finally made it. Okay, I want to listen to that guy, right? Because that guy's going to say, forget this, forget the theory, forget that. It isn't until you apply it. I think we're about, this pandemic has done something, and we don't know what it is yet, but the outcome will be determined in the near future, and that is people are now questioning, why am I sending my child to this school if they're not really learning a lot? That's one. Two, the information has now been democratized. In other words, you can go on YouTube, you can learn anything you want. In the past it was like, well, minorities don't have access to information. Dude, you got access to all kinds of information.
There's no excuse at this point.
This is what I get irritated with the just going to go side political on you just for a little bit, but I get really irritated with this nonsense about racism in the U.S., right? Because I look at it more as you got stupid people. And every race has stupid people. So if you tell me, do we have stupid people? I'm going, oh yeah, we got a bunch of stupid people. But when you look at a system like ours, like our system in the United States it's capitalism, right? It's probably the most successful, no, it is the most successful system.
It is the most successful, yeah.
Of man, right? And today, but fast forward, we have a system now where I can make money from home. I don't have to go get a job, right? So when people say, well, they're discriminating me, well, go get another job. There's plenty of jobs to be had. There's so many ways to make money. Nobody is stopping anybody from making money. It wasn't like when I came up 100%. In the 60s and the 70s, Nick, you could feel the racism. Dude, you can feel it, man. Like you could feel it, Nicky. So, and I can only imagine what people in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s saw that I didn't see, right?
Benito, yeah.
And so when I see people complaining about the stuff today, I'm like, really? Really? I said, Jay-Z, what? Billionaire? Boom. I mean, should we just go through, everybody who's made money, right? Who's making money? There's so many ways to make money today. And I think people who use, those things as, racism or any ism, by the way, it's just a crutch for not doing what you know you could be
100%.
doing. It's just a crutch. And so I'm
100%.
less
Chris Rock had a funny bit. Chris Rock had a funny bit about that. He was like, I'm not gonna go into full graphic details, but he is like, there's people there's slaves that are in heaven now, looking at like the black people in the '60s, like, damn, they got it good.
Yeah,
like it's always always something where you could progress, and that's where that saying "Make America Great Again." That's where it triggers certain people. But I mean, you have, like you said, you have your people that are ignorant to a lot of what's going on, and a lot of people that want to use it as a crutch. Like at the end of the day, yes, there's racism that's still around. Yes, there are signs of systemic racism. Yes, there's all of this, but there's too many avenues now for you to just bear on that. Like everybody wants to look forward and say, well, it's the system and it's how it's messed up, and this is just how America's designed. We're not talking about changing the entire country right now, and we're not talking about what is going on for there. What are you doing now to change that? Are you going to sit and harp on it, or are we going to move forward? And I can't. It's hard to use that as an excuse these days, especially for me. Not to say that I haven't gone through my own, personal, issues with police or with, everything that's been going on and seen it with my own eyes.
It's not that it's not
but
real.
At the end of the day, I can't let that stop me.
No,
can't let it stop me.
The thing is, we have to acknowledge, this is where I wish critical thinking would kick in more. I don't agree that there's systemic racism, because there's so many avenues that you can avoid any type of, dude, we can stay at home and make money. You can literally, you can do drop shipping on Amazon. There's so many. You can do a podcast. There's so many ways to make money. So when somebody says there's systemic racism, is that the system is conspiring for you not to be successful? No, there's no master plan here. There's stupidity. So let's kind of put a check mark on that. Sure. There's stupidity. It's like when you look at, and I'm not trying to minimize this, but this is an interesting point. When the Black Lives Matter thing starts, just to pick that point out, because that's the biggest one, right? The question was in 2019, when all this stuff was going on, how many blacks were actually killed by cops that year? I ask the question all the time. How many blacks were actually killed by cops that year? Most people, they don't know the answer. I think the number is 17. 17. I mean, just let that number run around in your head. And by the way, if we break that number down 17, how many were actually armed and probably, found themselves in that situation? Or how many of those officers were actually black as well? I got a feeling we're going to reduce that number quite a bit, right? Let's call it 10, Nikki. Let's call it 10. That is not systemic racism. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
That is not systemic.
I think they're looking at more from a situation where, like, okay, if you want to own your own business or however the case is, and they say, okay, well, we can't tell you because you're black that you can't get this job. However, we're going to see where it is that you live. So if you live in this part of the city and we know that this is what's going on, you're going to be you're going to be more apt to get denied a bank loan. But is that not true?
By the way, that is absolutely true.
Exactly. So
well, by the way,
there's little.
But again, let's look at it for what it is. Banks are in the business to make money. The color they care about is green, right? And so does that exist? Of course. That's called profiling, right? And the thing is, when you go to a bank to get credit in general, pink, blue, purple, white, pick your color, who you are. They're going to ask you, how much do you have in assets? What do you got? Where do you live? They're going to ask you all those questions. So it's not that it's directed at a group. Are there people there? Again, there's stupid people. There's exploiters out there. I get that. I'm so with you, right? Like, I got stories of exploiters, right? People who exploit. And those are always going to be there. But when you really look at it, the number, we talk about the people who didn't get the loan, but you didn't tell me about the people who got the loan. Like Bob Johnson, for example, the guy who built BET. Sold it for $1 billion? You think about
Viacom.
Yeah, to Viacom, right? So here's a guy who I'm sure went through his stuff, and he got the bag. He got the bag. And so when I hear these little instances, I go, okay, that could be true. For example, somebody was denied a loan because they lived in a certain hood, right? That could be true. Now, I'll ask the question, I'll go, now let me find 10 other people who don't live in that hood. They got loans. So if you live in that zip code, they're not giving out loans. Why? Because the algorithm is telling them that that's a high-risk loan, or they give them a higher interest rate, right? And so, but there's two different things going on here. One is that the bank is evaluating the risk. They're risk assessing. They want to lend money because banks holding money makes no sense. They need to give money away. Yeah. They need to loan.
That's how they make it. There's a lot of grants there's a lot of things that nobody takes advantage of that's out there.
And so, a lot. So I tell people, I said, well, was that racism or just a prudent business move? because they want to lend the money. It's not like they're saying, no, I'm not going to lend those money to anybody. If you're black, Hispanic, of course I'm not. I mean, some of the biggest businesses are black, Hispanic. Look at Goya, Hispanic business. So people want to invest. My point to all this is that we get back to critical thinking. It's too easy to label something and just say that's what it is.
And that's a scapegoat.
Yeah, and we take 2 data points. Boy, it happened to him, it happened to him. Take those 2 data points, and then we extrapolate that and say the rest of society is crooked. You're like, what? Wait a minute. You're like, whoa, where'd you get that? So let's run the numbers. And so, for example, here in Georgia, I mean, we have an affluent class of African Americans here. You know, people making 100%. Big bank here, yeah. And so there's
successful, very successful.
But there's of course there's ignorance out there. If you tell me, are there ignorant people, dude? I'm not going to argue with that. There's no way I'm arguing against that. Of course, there's.
You would be ignorant to say there isn't.
Right, that's correct. But well said, man. But there's so many ways now that we can. This isn't the '60s, man. This isn't the '70s. There's so many ways to make money now that you don't even need to deal with somebody physically. And so to use that as an excuse is not good. I think there's other problems that are going on in these different communities that we're not looking at. But that's another rabbit hole to go down. But I think the mindset, I want to bring it back to our conversation, is what the guy said, that Dr. Martin Seligman said, is what we say to ourselves. And when I talk to White Boy Mike, and White Boy Mike says, Victor, you realize white people are poor. And I said that shattered my image of what I thought I knew. That's what I'm talking about, is that it's too easy to label something or see something on the news and go, see, told you. And these are people who just are looking for reasons not to do what they need to be doing. There's no reason anybody can't be successful. There's going to be a small percentage of people who are handicapped. For whatever reason, they're going to be handicapped, right? Whether it's physical or mental. Got that. I think we're all about supporting those people, right? We're all good with that. But there's so much talent that's wasted in the hood, you know, that could be just elevated by a change of mindset. Yeah. You know, if you focus,
I agree.
It's like when you buy a car, Nikki. When you buy a car for the first time, what do you notice the very next day when you're driving that car?
Everybody has the same car.
Right? And so what happens is that if you believe that people are of a certain bent, racist, sexist, homophobic, then all of a sudden you start seeing them because that's what your brain is focusing in on while ignoring all the others. And I think we have that disease sometimes where we want to focus on what we think is the problem, but in reality, sometimes we just have to look in that mirror and go, damn, I probably could be doing something different, man.
100%. It's called cognitive bias. It's just like if you have this this idea where, you know, if you see A and A kind of looks like B, you're gonna think A plus B is C. Yeah. You know, best way to explain cognitive bias for me anyway. But it's just like if you see something that makes sense to you.
That's my guy Nicky right there, throwing out cognitive bias. That's my guy Nicky.
You know it. I mean, you know, I got a little bit of education. I didn't go to IIT, but I'm a little in there.
Well said, man. Well
but
said.
no, it's just true though, Les. It's like if you see that's a lot of what's going on now. It's everybody that's in this echo chamber that's yelling the exact same thing that's going on, and it's confirming their bias.
Yes, that's exact. It is confirmation bias. That's what they're looking for. And I think too much we're looking for that too often because it's too painful, Nikki, to turn inward and go, I'm just in a shitty situation. I haven't figured it out. It's painful to do that, man. It's because. You know, it's like when you're in a race, you know, and then it's like if you're like 2 steps behind somebody, you're like, I think I can catch him, right? 3 steps, you're like, oh man, I still got a chance. But when somebody's 100 steps ahead of you, you just go, I'll never catch up to them. That's like the race in life, right? People give up. And that I think is what happens is we give up and then we start blaming other things for what happened to us. And granted, there are situations where people just had shitty upbringings. Got it. Been there, done that. Some have obviously worse. It isn't until I started traveling around the world, Nikki, that I started seeing, like, dude, like true poverty, man, like true poverty, like stuff. I remember going to South Africa, and that was some stuff down there. Even Latin America, you travel.
I can imagine during the apartheid and all that.
Yeah. You see stuff down there, you're like, whoa, you know, we got issues. I grant you, we have issues. We have stupid people and we have issues. But man, I'd still rather be here playing. I'd rather play in this field than any other field. And I think we should be very grateful for what we have. And I think sometimes we lose that.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I don't think a lot of people see, the lens from outside of what we got going on. That we're pretty blessed to be here, regardless of what's going on and the things that what's happening. It's just like it could be worse. It could be a whole lot worse. And I know a lot of people don't even like to think that. It's crazy.
I got to add this. What's interesting though? When you travel around the world, you realize every country, literally every country, Nikki, has the exact same issues we have. There are people who exploited other people everywhere, right? People don't realize that the first slaves were actually like white. That's where Slavs actually, that's where it came from, right? So it's not, white people did enslave white people, right? So there's all this enslavement going on. Like even like the American Indians did the same thing. Yeah, those benevolent Indians, right, who were not benevolent at all, right? Anybody who understands the history of Indians, Native Americans, even in Latin America understands this. So every nation has been inhumane to other humans. This is not like just U.S.-centric, like it only happened here. Everywhere. Like throughout.
Do you think that's I think that's deep rooted. I think that's deep rooted in our DNA. Like if you see it like inside of the body, if we see a foreign, I don't even want to say the C word, but if you see a foreign bacteria or a virus inside of your body, the other bacteria inside of your body is going to pick on it, kind of bully it and kind of, gain it over. And then a lot of times they'll see, a lot of studies have shown that not only will the bigger and more dominant bacteria like kind of pick on the smaller bacteria, but the smaller bacteria will eventually try to get into the bigger bacteria and eventually follow. I mean, I think that stems from something deeper, and we're also tribal. You know what I mean? Tribal. That's why everybody's such a fan of the Vikings. They're a fan of the Cowboys. They're a fan of whoever your team is. We feel like if we're more superior, then that's what it is, and I think that's a deep rooted thing.
You emphasize something really interesting because tribalism is the danger. The thing is, once you. The irony of life sometimes is that we say we're all one, we're all the same, we're all God's children, right? And then we start drawing lines. Like, why do I have to use the word black or Hispanic or Asian or white? Why do I have to use that? Why can't we just be human beings, right? If I always said, if I was ever president and they said, okay, you can do one thing, you got one mulligan, you can do one thing, what would it be? And my thing would be, my one thing, just like as sure as I am sure about Heavy DB, my favorite rapper, this is the one thing I would do. I would eliminate the boxes. You don't check anything. You don't check anything, man. You don't check anything. Just no race. There's no box to check. Do you know what I mean? Maybe if you're American or a non-citizen, maybe I'll go that far with you, because you have to have sovereignty, borders. But other than that, I'm like, we get rid of that. I don't like, if you look at my website, Nikki, I stopped using like the word Hispanic or Latino, and that's not because I'm in denial, by the way. It's just that I said I can't contribute to this anymore. I can't contribute to drawing lines. And so every time I see something with a race in it, I always kind of recoil a little bit, because I'm just not into that. I'm all about, are you a human being? Yes. All right, let's talk.
You have no idea. You have no idea. I could keep you on here all night. I can't do that. But I am, however, going to do that when I do visit you in Georgia, because this is I feel like there's just so much so much that I can tell you, so much that we talk about, so much that I can really emphasize to say and everything that's gone on with bypassing, and then me always looking at you like a father figure, more than just a primo, like an uncle, like a father, always that, and somebody that's always guided me in the right direction, somebody I've always looked up to. When I look back at this is going to be a very crowning achievement for me in life. And I had this idea for the podcast because it's something I like to do. I like to ask questions. I like to learn, and that's been like kind of my mode, for having this. I want to learn. I want to be educated, and I love to learn. But then I started to stop thinking more selfishly, and then seeing the things that have happened in the past couple months, with Dad. I was like, if anything, and if my kids want to look back and learn and hear Dad also, they have the internet, and hopefully that the internet stays on or whatever the case is. But they have something.
Can I ask, why did you say selfishness though? I don't understand that.
selfishness in a positive way, selfishness to where, I mean, it could fall into an ignorant person, like we were talking about. It could fall into their hands to say, well, you just know these people, and you want to exploit them to kind of get. And it's just like, no, if I want to start a business and I have a family member who's is just proficient in sales, why not talk to them? And on top of that, we haven't spoken in a while, so why not do that? Friend of mine who she's a professional female.
But that's not being selfish, though. I think that's just.
I think selfish is the wrong word. It's more like I'm being I'm taking advantage in a good way of people that I know, so I can learn.
Well, yeah, I mean, I take advantage of people I know. If I got a connection, I'm using the connection. I mean, yeah, and what's the point? Am I being selfish?
Right.
You know what I mean? But there's it's all positive. I love what you're doing with the podcast. I think, the ability to kind of do it and be courageous and just go out there and go, okay, let me just try it. And then just, you're going to have your kind of, your hiccups and your missteps. So have I. Like I said, I got stories, Nicky. I got stories for days of all the screw-ups I've
I want to hear all those when I go visit you.
Everybody sees me, and they see the final version, right? The finished version. Mm-hmm. And they don't see all the shit that I've gone through. Only my wife, Shelly, knows all the shit I've gone through, like really understands it. Because I'm like, there are times when I'm like, yeah, why? And I'm just cursing, running around the house, just swearing up a storm, right? Where this cool persona does not exist. It's like, and and there's times where I'm just confused. I don't know how to do this. Why did I do this? Why didn't I do that? Man, I castigate myself, but then I go, and I just shake it off and just kind of move on. So
the shaking off is what I need to learn how to do. I've gotten really down on myself a lot, and I've had to remind myself, like, you've gone through a lot, you've accomplished a lot, and it's time to give yourself a little bit more credit. And then with this,
why are you down on?
Can I ask,
not to be a therapist here, but why are you down on yourself? Mm-hmm. Like, for example,
I think there's certain situations where I would see myself, I would see the kids, and I would be like, I could be doing a little bit more. I can be a little bit less tired, and I can spend a little bit more time with them. It's like actual problems that I'll encounter, and then I'll apply that to what I'm doing. So I'll apply that to like the podcast and say, I feel like I'm going to, drown out, a listener, that's why in order to keep them more entertained, I'll throw in a picture in there, or I'll throw in this. It's like kind of me getting in my own head to say, well, I want to kind of be the best version of myself, and I want other people to see the best version of myself. But also what I have to remember is not a lot of people are going to get into the shit that you get into. And then on top of that, there's only one person in your lane, and that's you driving your own lane. And at the end of the day, people will follow it if they really dig it. So that's something that I have to remind myself.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things you're going to live with, man, this is the thing you just have to accept, man. It's like the woulda, couldas, or the shouldas, right, man? Dude, that's just like forever and a day. When you look at kids, like even I traveled a lot, Nicky, early on, and this is part of the, I traveled a lot, like 50% of the time I was gone. I always try to make it a point to come back when there was a significant event, right? And the kids always appreciated that. But there were times I missed. I missed a lot of times with the kids. But, and you can't go back. But the thing is, what was the alternative, Nick? If I didn't do that, if I was at home all the time and I wasn't grinding it out, well, the kids wouldn't be able to go to college, graduate debt-free, and all the other things they got, all the bennies. They wouldn't have had that unless I did that. And so there's always a price. There's always a trade-off. And I think don't castigate yourself over the trade-offs. The thing is, if you have an idea of what you want to do, then believe it or not, they're looking at you and you're leading by example. They see you hustling, they see you grinding. Believe it or not, even though you're not saying anything to them, your action is speaking louder than anything you could say. He's grinding, and they're watching, they're observing. I would venture to guess that their observation memory is going to be longer than the verbiage. Those things you say to them. Their observation memory is going to be longer because they're going to look at you. He's always on that thing. He's always grinding up. Because what you're trying to do is grow something, right? And so stay the path. Minimize the guilt. Spend time when you can, when you have it. Be patient, that whole thing. A little more time management, whatever it may be. But then when you're in it, you're in it. Don't castigate yourself. It helps nobody. It really doesn't. It doesn't.
Right,
help anybody.
exactly.
And I think you just got.
It's a crazy thank you for that too, because I have to apply that. I have to apply that, and I have to also remember, at the end of the day, I'm not doing this for nothing. I'm building towards something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not like I'm here, have to wait. I have, even if relationship problems are strong with the kids, it's like I'll try to mitigate the time as best as I can. I'll try to, do everything that I can. But that's also another reason why I'm up at 4:00 in the morning. I have to edit these videos, and then I wake the kids up for school. Then after that, I got to get them dressed. Then after that, take them to daycare. Daycare takes them to school. Then I go to work for 9 hours. Then after work, pick them up.
Grind,
then after that, go to the gym, and then come home and then try to spend some time with the family. Try to, and get a little bit of, editing in there just to do it all over again. And it's just like, I get down on myself because it feels like I should be doing more, but then I have to stop and think about what you're doing more, as a father of 3 girls than a lot of other people are doing. And, I'm not to toot my own horn or pat myself in the back, but at the end of the day, it's just like, it's giving yourself a little more credit.
You have to. I mean,
the
thing is, see, this is where you have to have the blinders on. See, you see other fathers
blinders,
doing other things.
yeah.
You see other fathers doing other things. So I've learned not to look. Like I said, I get what people are doing, but I'm just like, this is my lane. I'm just doing my thing. I'm doing my thing. Because comparison is a disease, man. That's a big disease we have. We're always comparing ourselves with other people, right? And it's never enough. Even if you start doing what they did, you still say, it's just not enough. And this will go on forever and a day. So I'm just telling you, guilt sometimes is a worthless emotion because all it does is just really undermine your ability to move forward. And I think I've learned over time to try to minimize that negative self-talk. I should be, would have, I could have, I should have. Like that time has passed. And the thing is, here's what's interesting. So you're away from your kids. You're away from your kids, right? And you're in the moment where you're saying, I should be, I could be, right? Now, not only are you spending time away from your kids, but you're ruining the time you have finally for yourself. It's double indemnity right there. It's like now you're ruining both. You didn't give them the time, and you couldn't even be you in the time that you gave yourself. And now you've just undermined your success.
You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Yeah. And so you have to figure out, look, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to build something. And then you're moving in a certain direction. And where you can give time, you give time, right? You give time, you give time. And I think kids see that, man. I really think kids see that. And sometimes it's weird what they remember. It's just you sitting down with them for 5 minutes to have a cup of coffee, when they're drinking juice, whatever it may be. You're talking to them for 5 minutes. And believe it or not, they're thinking, that was great. Spent 5 minutes with my dad. It was awesome. And they're floating for the rest of the day. In your mind, you're going, I need to spend more time with the kids. And your child is just like, happy than pig in shit, so to speak. So we do that to ourselves, like with everything. When we see other people doing stuff, we say, I should be better. Well, compared to what, Dickie? Compared to what? I mean, back in the 30s and the 40s, people were working on the farm, 14, 15, 16 hours a day, killing themselves. They didn't even see their kids. They just saw the kids on the weekend, and that's all, right? And so compared to what? Who are you comparing yourself to?
Right.
And as soon as you stop comparing.
Exactly. A lot of times it's me from yesterday. A lot of times it's just like, I'm better than this. Like a lot of shit that Preto, you don't have no idea. A lot of stuff, like I said, a trip to Georgia would help, but it's just like, I could have done that so much better, or I could have not done that. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's the steps of life. It's a learning process, of course.
Dude,
but it's like once it becomes a mistake over and over again, it's like you must want to be doing it.
Dude,
you know what I mean?
You're going to go to the grave with that, man. Even I still do it. I would have, could have, should have. I should have done this. I should have done that. I won't get into detail, but I just had a moment yesterday where I was like, how did I miss that? How did I not know I needed to do that? How did I not start this 6 months ago? That was right in front of me. I saw it. I knew it. And Shelly's just looking at me like, let me know when you're done. And then I'm done. All right. Now, let's talk about something else. Because it's like, I just go through that. She goes, you done with your pity party? Yeah, I'm done. All right, good. Let's go do it. And then you just realize.
I love it.
You didn't see it. Sometimes you don't see it. Even at my age, I don't see things. I'm blinded by certain things, so I don't see it. And then later on, I go, how did I miss that? But again, you go, you just shake it off and just go, let's move on. I don't want to dwell in the past. I think I'm working on a book called The Big Deal Mindset. And the Big Deal Mindset is fascinating because it's more about memory, that everything you do is based on your memory of yourself. For example, I use the analogy, it's a stupid analogy, a stupid story I have about how the downstairs by my office, the hand sink was leaking underneath, right? Just dook, dook, little drops were coming down. I was so afraid to fix it, Nicky, that I just put a bowl underneath it because I wanted to avoid it. I didn't want to deal with it, right? And then after a while, the drip kept getting faster. So what do? Do you fix it? No, you get a bigger bowl, right? So you got a bigger bowl, put it under there. And I went through like 2 or 3 iterations before I realized I got to fix this thing, right? And to make a long story short, I fired myself up like, all right, I'm going to go to Lowe's today, get all the tools I need. Tomorrow morning, get the cup of coffee, then I'm going in, I'm going to fix it. Boom, I go in there, it takes me 10 minutes to fix it. First thought I have is, why didn't I do that before? Why didn't I do that the first time, right? And here's why I didn't do it. Because when I really asked myself the question, why was I afraid to deal with that plumbing? Because in the past, I remember we had a house on Melrose. We had some plumbing issues, and that just went tits up, so to speak, just totally dicked that up, right? And that was in my brain, that every time I tried working with plumbing, and I probably have other stories in there, it never went well. So I brought that memory forward, and when I was confronted with a plumbing problem, my brain said, my attitude said, you can't do that. You've never done that well. Remember? Right. Back then? And so that past experience comes forward at that moment, and boom, you're paralyzed. And what I'm learning is that you really got to question what your memory is telling you. You know what I mean? You really got to question what your memory is telling you. And the only way to do that is to go, next time you confront it, I started asking myself the 5 whys, right? The 5 whys, which is, it was a Toyota method of asking, how do you get to a problem? I think you saw the video I did. And you get to the why. Why am I afraid of that? Why? And you get to the point, you go, okay, so I just don't know what I'm doing. All right, let me go watch a video on YouTube. Figure it out. Got it. Let's go do this thing. And you jump in. Will you screw it up? Yeah, of course you will. But eventually you'll figure it out. You think about everything you've solved up to this point, you figured it out, Nicky. Think about it. There's so many things you started out going, I don't know how to do it. Like even just doing a podcast, just getting on this. You initially were like, I don't know how to do that. Right? We talked about early on. So what do I do? What do I do?
Programs and trying to figure out the camera, all of that. Yeah.
And then, again, by the time you get to episode 20, you'd be like, yeah, boom, bam, button, switch, bam. All right, let's go. What are we doing? It's going to be you.
Eventually, I want to be able to get the girls into doing the tech so that I don't have to do it and they can be part of it. And if it gets big enough, then I would be like, you're technically employed by dad's thing. So now you can get your little form of income. I'm going to pay my kids, but going back to it was that really set something off in my brain about the leak in the sink. To me, grabbing the bowl, to me, it's just like I see kind of the world in a different kind of aspect. When the bowl, to me, and you said, I just get in my head that, that little thing in the back of it was you lying to yourself in a sense, you know what I mean? I'm going to just get this because this is going to take care of the problem. That's a lie to yourself. And what happens when we lie and we're trying to cover up another lie, we'll get a bigger lie and it goes bigger and bigger and bigger to the point until we can't. But if you just took care of the problem right away, you wouldn't have had to do it. You know what I mean? So that kind of took me into like your mind a little bit to say, in my mind as well, because I do the same thing. So it's just like, am I lying to myself? Am I here, trying to say that I'm not doing what I'm supposed?
I think we avoid things, Nick. It's part of our primal brain, right? We avoid things that represent danger, right? And not danger like that's going to kill me or anything, but things that are uncomfortable. It's like an avoidance system. We all have an avoidance system. And so when something triggers me, because that was a trigger, right? I saw the drip, triggered my brain. The brain immediately rushes back into its database and goes, let's look up the files. Oh, yeah, plumbing. Here you are. You didn't do that well. No? Oh, here's another time. Oh, you didn't do that well either. So all of a sudden, the data comes forward and goes, dude, you don't want to do that, right? It's almost like when we try something new. You had the podcast, and let me ask you a question. How many times did you think of the podcast, but then put it off on starting it? Like, how many did you have?
That's a good question. To be completely honest, I had the idea since 2017. I was watching a Joe Rogan interview and I was just like, that would just be the shit, just to sit down with people and talk and all this other good stuff. And I was like, I know a few people that I can learn from, but then that's like, I'm too busy. I got this going on, but it always dawned on me. And then I finally saw it in September, a buddy of mine that was doing it. I haven't looked back since. I saw it and I was just like, I'm doing that. Like, that's what I'm going to do.
So let's break that down.
Weird because
no, analyze that. I don't mean to interrupt you, but analyze what happened there. You saw somebody doing it, right? And so you saw somebody goes, that'd be cool to do, right? There's a whole science called mimetics about imitating other people, right? And that falls into it. You see somebody go, damn, that'd be kind of cool to do. I think I want to do that, right? So there now is the germ of the idea, right? But then you said to yourself, well, I got a job, I got this, you rationalized in your head why now was not a good time. Right? But really, there was fear there. There was fear because you really didn't know how to do it, right? Because when we know how to do something, we just jump right in. Then Fast forward to really break down what you just said. Then you saw your friend do it. Remember that whole thing I talked about, social proof? Once you see somebody doing it, you go, wait a minute, if he can do it, I could do it. And then all of a sudden, your attitude changed because now you believed you could do it. And that's all it required. Up to that point, you didn't believe it. You saw somebody you know do it, who was, as they, in psychology, they call it when somebody's like a social distance close to you. In other words, when somebody's kind of near you, like a near neighbor, like for example, think of somebody famous. Okay, you know me, so we're kind of near neighbors. But Joe Rogan's way out here, right? And if you see Joe Rogan, they go, Joe Rogan's like at another level, right? But then you see me do it, you go, well, he did it, Beto did. Why can't I do it? Right? Because I'm closer from a social distance. And so that friend of yours represented a very close social distance to you. And you said, yeah, I could do that. He did. Why can't I do it? Man, I've been thinking about doing this for a while. And then you went over, you were smart enough to say, got a couple of questions for you. Right? And you asked him a couple of questions. How do you do it? And he says, here's how you do it. Just go. But that was your progression. Initially, you put it off and you used every reason to not do it because you were afraid to do it. But when you saw somebody else do it, this is why social proof is so important. Once you see somebody do something, this is what, like, if you're watching this or listening to this, once you see somebody do it, you don't hate the person. Don't hate on the person like, why he getting out of that money? Why is he doing, don't hate on him. You should celebrate. But anyway, so
right.
I like the analysis of your story. You can edit this back in, is that you were thinking about all these things, but when you saw somebody do it, man, it's like, yeah, that's kind of cool.
It made sense too. It's just like if I had any other kind of thing to, kind of that give me an eye opener to say, okay, this is something that should happen. Everybody's been saying it too. They're like, this makes sense for you. You're a talker, you're charismatic, you're this and that, and also about giving yourself more credit. I never looked at myself like that. I always looked at myself like somebody that was a talker or whatnot. But I've always wanted to gain, knowledge. I always wanted to grab that from, anywhere that I could, that I was interested in. A lot of people don't believe in ADHD and there's a lot of science that says that that's not a real, disease either,
it's real,
or
man.
disease.
It's real.
It's not a real. Oh, you trust me, I know. But it's like you don't have ADHD. You're just not interested in the things you're supposed to be. Like somebody's veering your path this way when your path really should be this way. You know what I mean? So that's what I tell the girls all the time, and they're like, you know what? Instead of telling them what do you want to be when you grow up, I say, what are you good at? And they're like, well, I like to dance, I like to do this, or I like to do art. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna buy you an easel. I'm gonna see just how good you are, and I'm gonna push that. If you're as good as you want to be, and if that's something that you're putting your focus on, I'm not gonna be mad if you're 100% in that and your grades are a little bit slipping. Although education is important, however, at the end of the day, if you find something you're passionate about, Dad is gonna push that, because I didn't have that. If I would have been pushed to like do music or something, it'd have been over for me. I think.
So you bring up a great point that ties back to your mindset with the kids, is that what we didn't have, Nikki, what we really didn't have was we didn't have, I hate to use the word because it's so cliche, the phrase, we didn't have role models. We didn't have people modeling for us what success looked like, right? What our parents modeled for us was what survival looked like. Big difference. It's what survival looked like, right? And that's why when you look at like families, that, and they create generational wealth, a lot of that generational wealth obviously is handed down, but it's modeling for your kids what they need to be doing. And so what you're doing, and this is why I think you're not giving yourself enough credit, is you're modeling for them what it is to try to start something, what it is to kind of go through the ups and downs of trying to figuring things out. But then you're going to come out the other side, much like the phoenix transformed from the ashes. You come out the other side going, I figured it out. And they go, oh, my dad figured it out. That's going to stick with them because they go, well, damn, I know Dad knows how to do this because my kids do that with me. They're like, okay, well, I know you could do it. How did you do that? Now we model that for them. We didn't have that. So you and I we've started from a position of somewhat disadvantaged.
I was just going to use a little bit of a disadvantage.
Yeah, it's more than just a little bit, right? Because what happens is that, and I've seen this with people, is that, when their kids, like my kids now have an advantage. I mean, my little Vic has like his vocabulary is beyond mine. Really? Like there's a couple of words he'll say, well, what does that mean, Vic? He's like, it means this. And I'm like, all right. And he articulates in such a way, you're like, okay. But here's what happened was, so my real learning in terms of real English, being able to, diction, pronunciation, thought process, so forth, started really when I was maybe college and maybe after college, right? When I started reading more. So call that 23, 24, maybe 25 years, right, into my life. These kids, our kids, I mean, we were handing them books at like 5, easy. We were bribing them to read books early on. They would read the 800-page Harry Potter, and we'd pay them like 10 cents per page, and they would read that. They'd be all excited. And so they were reading all the time. And so all of a sudden, go back to that racing analogy. What happened was, when I started out and you started out, everybody who was advanced starts running ahead of us. But they're running, and they're so far ahead of us, Nick, that we'll never really catch up. We'll kind of close the gap, right? But very hard to catch up. It is what it is, right? And I'm not saying it can't be done, but I just say it's kind of impossible. It's like when people learn how to, let's say, play a piano, right? And they're only 7 years old because their parents were pianists, and they taught them how to play piano at 7. If that kid's playing piano at 7, you start when you're 25 playing piano. I think it's going to be hard to catch up. Yeah, and you're not going to catch up. You'll maybe approximate closer. So what happens now fast forward, now my kids come, and now we get them reading. And now they have the advantage. They're coming like from Jump Street. They're like at 5 or 6, they're reading books. And so all of a sudden, I'm a proud father to say, I like when my kids can outdo me, right? Because that kind of shows we did something right. But I think that's what you have to look at. I think that you're modeling for your kids what should be done and what a business person does, what real work ethic's about when you try to do something, how it's not easy. They're going to see, once in a while, you're going to kick the light, go, dang, the light doesn't work right, microphone didn't work, internet crash, whatever it may be. And they're going to see that and go, ooh, that's harsh. But then they're going to see you come out the other side and figure it out. So, he went through all that and he figured it out. And you become that role model of figuring things out.
Amen. I feel like that's gonna be the highlight for me as far as remembering exactly what I'm doing it for, and that the girls are paying attention.
They're paying attention. They're paying attention.
I know.
And
I think I got it.
And your partner's paying attention, right? Because they're supporting you. Like Shelly's always been on my side. Like, all right, tell me what you want to do. And I said, all right, here's kind of what I'm thinking. She's like, all right, sounds a little crazy, but go ahead. You got to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so
Teddy's there. She's there.
You're going to figure it out. Remember, obstacles are those things you see when you take your eyes off the goal. That's always my big one. The second thing I always remember is never aim for perfection, aim for success. Keep that in mind. 100%. Never aim for perfection, aim for success. People who aim for perfection give up because I don't want to start until I got all the right equipment, until everything is right, Victor. That's when I'll start. They never start. Me, yeah. I just start, and I just gotta start piecing stuff together and just figure shit out as I go along, man. That's reality, right. Man. That's reality.
That's a super reality. Speaking of reality, not to keep you on, I'd love you to death.
I'll end when you end. I'll let you know if I'm tired out.
I had one of the only real questions that I was thinking of, because I was, wanted
beer,
to flow more natural.
That's not beer. I just want to say that's water, man. That's just self. Probably have my
I've been parched this whole time. That's the thing. For episode 20 or 25, however I do, I'm gonna make sure I have a thing of water here. But no, as I was saying, you've done so much that I look at and admire. I remember this one time my mom was and this is when I was doing pretty bad in school. She was like, you don't want to do this. You want to look at Prieto. Prieto, he just moved to Costa Rica or Argentina. It was like he just moved to Argentina. It's a great job and this and this and this and that. I could see you doing that. Like my mom was very, very, very supportive, but I think she kind of knew early on and didn't want to tell me. School wasn't me. I was not a school person whatsoever. But she's kind of putting you as kind of look at who we know. This is your blood family. Look at this. You want to do that? He's traveling. He's this and he's that. And it's always been so admirable to see. And the progression from the first book you ever published, I read it. You know what I mean? I still think about, my times, where I was, really scared going places that I didn't know. And I think about Prieto coming off that train when he used to play basketball and where he was going. And, all those stories, they still stick with me to this day because you played a very vital part. You know what story I'm talking about.
I know what story you're talking about. Yeah.
it's like all those, they stick with me, and seeing all of that, like if I model everything like towards, gearing towards success, but it's just like the obstacles, you try to go through them and you try to go, and it's just like, it's always something different that I got to deal with. But you always bring me back to perspective and seeing like, just focus and like, this is what you could possibly be. But having all of that and seeing that, what is something that you think, since you've accomplished so much in the past, that you're like, you know what, I've done really great, but in 5 years, this is what I want to do. It could be the biggest dream, the biggest idea that you have, but in like, not even in 5 years, but what's the biggest thing like you think you can accomplish and want to accomplish?
Dude, I'm so going to go, I'm going to be a contrarian again. I'm going the other way on you. I am really happy, Nick. Truly happy that of all the things I've done, like, so next year I turn 60. I can admit that, right? And I'm like I said, I look back. It's almost like if you look back, like down the road, like the path you've just come. And I'm like, damn, that's pretty impressive. I have to admit, I have those moments. I go, that's pretty impressive. I got the traveling I've always wanted to be done. I've always wanted to travel, not as much as I thought I wanted to. And I look at now, I go, if I never travel again, I'll be okay with that, right? The other thing is, I look at my accomplishments, and I'm like, well, I remember when I spoke with Zig Ziglar on the same stage. Dude, the smile on my face, you just couldn't wipe that thing out for a week, man. It was just amazing. That was another one. The reality show I had, it was like, wow, okay, where'd that come from? And I got all these, like the story about me in the Middle East, right? Oman. I got a bunch of those stories. I've had so many blessed, magical moments in my life. Do you know what I mean? That if everything just kind of went flatline right now, I'd be like, nah, I'm good, man, because I lived a good life. So I've got all the stuff, and again, none of it was expected, Nikki. It wasn't like I mapped out my plan. I got this good career. I didn't do any of that. All I know is I moved in a certain direction, because I think that's all we do. We move in a certain direction. I don't want to go south. I don't want to go west. I don't want to go east. I think north is where I want to go. Now, do I have specific GPS coordinates? I have no idea, right? I'm just like, I know that's the way. That's been kind of my system, right? I know I need to go to school. Why? I don't know, but I know that if I go this way, that way, that's not good. Let's go to school. Once I went to school, I go, okay, I know I don't want to be an engineer anymore. Okay, what do you think you want to do? I don't know. Maybe sales. That seems like I could probably do well there, make more money. Are you sure? I don't know, but I know that's the direction I want to go. Let's move in that direction. And it's this constant progression of not knowing what the hell I'm getting into, right? But I know that I'm moving north, in my true north. And so every time I've moved sideways, compromised, did something I didn't want to do, really, it never went well. And so what's happened is that the more you put out into the universe, people like to use the law of attraction, right? Like, yeah, you attract things. It's not so much the law of attraction. One could call it that. I like to call it the law of opportunity. That the more things you try, the more you push, you start running across a different crowd of people. If you're running around with the same group, you're going to get the same thing. Definition of insanity, right? But when you move out and you start doing things, like when my boss said, hey, you have to move to Argentina. Well, it was really three choices: Mexico, Venezuela, or Argentina. I picked Argentina. Venezuela was too violent, and Mexico had a high kidnap rate. So I'm like, nah, let's not do that. Yeah. And so we moved to Argentina, moved the family with us. We're like, did I know what I was doing? No, but I go, I think this is a good position. They made me VP of sales, and if I wanted the position, you got to go to Argentina. Okay, do we go to Argentina? I mean, the VP position is pretty damn good. I mean, it's all good money. I think that's the right direction. Is that north? Yeah, I think that's north. Let's go north. Did I know what I was doing? I didn't know what I was doing. So I go down there. I didn't know if I was going to be successful or if I was going to fail. Okay, and then, so things like that I just do. Like, I created the documentary, The Motivator. I was like, should I do a movie? It's going to cost a lot of money to make this movie. It'd be kind of cool to document it. Does this kind of line where we're going? We're still going north? I'm like, yeah. I think this is still going north. We're still good. Let's do that. And then that led to another. Every time I put something out, Nick, it's like something happened. It's like you're going to put these podcasts out, and you're going to have all these unintended consequences that are going to come your way. And people are going to say it's the law of attraction. You're lucky. No, you're putting shit out into the universe, right? And then you're finding people who have common points with you or can help you along the journey, who want to help you, right? Which brought us together on this podcast. This wouldn't have happened unless you went on that journey, right? Yeah. To get to episode 10. It wouldn't have happened. And so that's what it's always been like for me. It's just I keep doing it, something happens. I go, do I know what I'm doing? No. I've wasted so much money sometimes that I'm like, that was such a stupid thing to do, right? I've lost money in stock. You don't want to hear my woes on that one. You know, you're like, oh, why did I do that? You're an idiot. Then I get past it, you know, just go. Okay. Yeah. I said, okay, you can't look back. And I think when you ask me about okay, now what do you want to do for the next 5 or 10 years? First of all, my word for this year is gratitude. Like, just be grateful for everything I've had up to this point. I don't think I want to ask God for anything else. I think, you know, I've gotten my fair share. I think God has expended a lot on me, and I'm like, I don't want to be a malagradecido, ungrateful. I'll be grateful for what I got up to this point. Thank you very much. And so, but I'm also getting to a point where the last 3, maybe 4 years, even during the pandemic, you know, things have gone well. And so that's a blessing in and of itself. And so I am actually just enjoying. And I'm by the way, the only growing I look forward to is probably growing in terms of experimenting, doing different things like I've always done. But with you know, I'm not that guy who says, all right, I want to build the company. I want to scale it to over $100 million. That's what I want to nail it. I want to start my own clothing line, be $1 million, be up there with Kanye West. You know, it's not me. Dude, I'm enjoying my life. My quality of life is like through the roof. By that I mean is, I believe less is more sometimes. You know what I mean? And if you're filled with wants, you'll always need something. And I think I said you can control your life this way. You can demand more wants, or you can just reduce your needs. And what I found in life,
if you're filled with wants, you'll always need something.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Yeah. And so all you gotta do is
get that tattooed on me.
Yeah, all you gotta do is reduce your needs, and it's amazing. If you just say, I don't really need a lot of things, right? And the thing is, you can be so much happier. I heard the story about the monk. This is a good story. So the monk, there's a monk and this guy who is a politician, right? And he works for the king, right? And he's all up here, and they grew up together, right? The monk is poor, doesn't have a lot of money, right? But this guy's rich, he's a politician, right? And so the politician, the prime minister of the king, tells his friend the monk, he says, you know, if you work harder, right? You know, if you work hard, you get educated, he says, you wouldn't have to live off rice and beans, make it Puerto Rican, right? And then the monk turns around and says, you know, if you could live off rice and beans, you wouldn't have to take orders from anybody. And I was like, I mean, just think about that. It's just two perspectives, right? Because he's saying, if you did all these things, you could work for the king. And he said, well, if you learned how to live off rice and beans, you wouldn't have to work for the king. In fact, you wouldn't even have to listen to the king. You could do whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's kind of one of those, you know what I mean? That story, and I'll give you one more story. These are stories I have in my head that remind me of where I'm at. It's almost like my GPS system, right? My triangulation system. The other story I heard, I thought was interesting, is about a guy who's on a fishing wharf, right? Just fishing, right? And he has a small cooler, right? A small cooler. And so every time he fills the cooler, he decides to go home. And this businessman is watching this. Every time he goes out to the wharf, he just sees the guy. He's catching fish like a madman, but he fills it up and then he goes home. Fills it up, goes home. So one day he says to this guy, says, look, dude, says, I don't know what you're doing with fishing, but apparently you're amazing at it. He says, why don't you get a bigger cooler? Like that you can catch more fish. He says, well, what do I do with this extra fish? He says, I just want to sit here and fish. He goes, no, but if you catch extra fish, you can take what you want home, right? And then all these other fishes, you can take it and sell it. He says, what do you mean sell it? Yeah, take it to the market. You could sell it and make more money. He says, okay, then what would be the next step? He says, well, then you can really grow a business by catching more fish, and now you can probably get your own whatever store, whatever it may be. You know, and then after that, it's going to be a big business. He goes, well, what do I do after that? He goes, well, then after that, businessman's giving him advice. After that, dude, we can franchise this thing. Then all of a sudden, you're going to have all this. He says, okay, what do I do after I franchise? He says, what do you mean? After you franchise, you're going to have like so much money. He says, what am I going to do when I have all that money? And the old man answers his own question. He goes, probably just sit on the dock and fish.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So in other words, the man had found his peace already. But the people talking business to him like, no, this is what you want to do. This is what you want to do. But it really brought him back to this. And that's how I feel my life is. You know, it's like everybody wants to talk me into doing all these things, but I'm good. I'm fishing off the dock here. I'm happy. And so I don't have to keep doing this, like jacking the game up, because that's how we're conditioned, right? If you're not striving, you're not growing. And I call bullshit on that now. As I got older, I call bullshit on that because there's something about staying still. Do you know what I mean? Doing what you enjoy, what's controllable. And so in my environment, I don't know if you know this, but my kids work for me now, right? Did I tell you this or no? Vic and Camille work for me. They both work for me.
Wow.
And we have such a beautiful working relationship, right? And it's like, how beautiful is that? Father, kids.
That's what
and everybody runs their own time. Everybody knows what they have to do, and everybody plays their own position. It's like, Camille will come over. Vic's in Florida, so he can't come over all the time. But Camille will come over almost every other day. We hang out. We go to Starbucks. We talk business. Get some stuff done. And I spend so much time with my daughter now. It's like whatever I didn't do before, I got all now. And it's now she's learning the business, and she runs my Sales Velocity Academy. All the marketing you see online, she does all that for me. Vic does all the editing with the videos and stuff like that, but Camille runs all the marketing. Now she's just like she basically tells me sometimes what we're going to do. Like, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to fire this up. We're going to do it like that. I'm like, all right, good enough. And then I let her run it. And so where do I want to go? I would like to continue this thing because right now, man, we're like in the zone. By the zone, I mean, I'm not talking the financial zone. Yeah, we're making money, but it's more you're making money. It's not up here, but it's not down there. It's just somewhere nice. And then you have the kids helping you build the business, and everybody's having fun, and everybody's not stressed out. I mean, I don't know about you. I call that the zone. That's a beautiful zone to be in. And so when you say, what do you want to do the next 5 years? If I can keep the zone going for the next 5 years, 10 years, I'd be really happy with the zone because we're very comfortable right now.
I've been taking in all of that right now, and I've been so itching to not waiting for my turn to speak because I feel that's rude as a person that's trying to learn and but it's also been kind of confirming more so everything that I was saying before about how I viewed you as far as what you were to me when it's coming down to like you're not nobody that's a dream chaser. Dreams happen and they keep happening and happening and happening. So like I'll look back at this, when us talking, and I'm going to be like, you're saying all the wrong things because you've already confirmed what you were saying before. You know that he's not thinking in the future. It's like counting your blessings now and seeing what's happening. That's exactly what's happening to me right now. I didn't ask for to start anything with clothing or anything. I had a buddy of mine who presses him up and was like, I want to sponsor the show. Now, if I sponsor, I'm going to give you these free shirts. Just plug us or whatever the case is, and here's that. I'm like, okay, eventually I want to make my own shirts and want to do my own thing. Let's do some business together. Then that kind of gradually went in. And it's like the more people, like the first podcast goes, then other people are saying, hey, let me try this one. Let me try this one. And then, let me do one. And it's like, I'm not doing it purposefully. It seems like this is the path I should be on. And I'm like you said, I'm not, thinking about what's going on in 5 years. I'm always focused on that next, that episode then and there. And whatever happens, it just happens.
You're moving to your true north. They use that phrase, right?
Exactly. True north
is who I am. True north is who you are. And so you're moving in the direction of true north. And things are happening as you move in that direction. Look, a business plan immediately fails as soon as it's written. Why? Because it never conforms to reality. It never does. Every business plan is a construct of what it should be in terms of reality, but it's never the way it works out, right? Sure. So as soon as you write the business plan, it's already inept. It's already useless. So what you're figuring out is what I figured out is like you can only figure out what true north is, and that's all we got to work with. I know that's the direction I want to move in. Do I have all the steps choreographed? Absolutely not. Do I know what I'm going to do? Not really. Do I know what opportunities are around the corner? Absolutely no idea. But I know that's true north.
Have you modeled this at all, like towards any kind of business venture? Because True North not only sounds like a cool ass name for like for something to do, but it's like the concept behind it. Anybody could get right behind that. I think that's something that maybe you could possibly look into. I mean, I'm not giving you business ideas, or maybe I'll edit this out and say it was my idea. No, but no, like True North is just so cool. It's so thought provoking, and it's so like
it's not. By the way, needle. It's not my phrase. I've used True North. It's been described. I remember I read a book years ago where the guy used True North in the context of leadership for a large corporation. He says you got to understand what your True North is. In other words, define who you are as a company, align yourself with those values in the company, and then move. That's your True North. Everybody understands that. These are the rules. This is how we roll. Right. This is how we roll. And so from there I took True North. I love that concept because it goes, okay, so basically I just got to align with myself. Instead of not a company, I just align with myself. What do I want to do? And then I'll just move in that general direction. And I love the concept of moving in a general direction. They didn't give me that part of the book. That part I just kind of weaved in because that made sense to me. Just move in that general direction. I don't have the answer.
It's an awesome concept too, and it's something that I can see you honestly on stage, and that would draw me in. That would completely draw me in. Like, what is true north? True north, and this and that, and then like getting into that, and then like that's where it comes in, and it's something that'll pull you in. It's something that pulled me in, and it's just like because I'm really this podcast is me living in my true north. If I had a production company, I would call it True North Productions.
There you go. It pulls you in because it's a broad enough concept. You understand it, but it's a broad enough concept where you fill in what that is. That's the beauty of the True North concept, right? Is that you're filling it in. I'll say, okay, True North is just we move that way. And you're going, okay, so I need to move that way, and these are the things I would do and how I would do it because this is what I believe. So everybody gets to fill in their True North. So, yeah, man. Why don't you get shirts that says True North, man?
Do I have permission?
It's not my name, man. So you can do whatever you want with it, man. It's all yours, man. So yeah,
I'm on it. I'm gonna definitely think of something. I promise you that. I can't thank you enough, Pietro. Like I don't have no words to say as much as I've learned, and as many things that I've learned along the years. There's really no words that I can say and to be able to articulate correctly to thank you just for inspiration, just for everybody has that person in the family where they're just like, that's that guy, like that's the one that you want to model yourself after, even though it's somebody like as humble as you are, and gratitude being the word of your for the year, but it's just like it's me also wanting to show gratitude. And it's not even of like a necessary flattering to tell you because I appreciate what you've done for just here. It's like anybody can look at that. Little Angel can look at it. Big Angel, I'm sure, can look at your business model and do that. Everybody, from the top of from DT stuff all the way down to Robert, his crazy ass. Like, it's.
I gotta tell you something funny. I gotta tell you something funny though. This has been you said.
But thank you. I really.
You're very welcome, Nick. It was my pleasure and honor to be on the show, man. So I was waiting for my invitation, man. So I was gonna tell you that what's interesting, Nikki, is that. I don't know when it hit me, but it was like, and I told my wife I felt very uncomfortable with this moniker, right? This title, is that because I never sought it, that's something I wanted, but it made me really uncomfortable when I realized that I was the guy. Like, yeah, you could be like, and everybody kept pointing at me. I'm like, dude, stop pointing at me. Do you know what I mean? It's like, because it was really uncomfortable. And then I remember, I forgot what the situation was. I think I kind of remember, but it was one of those situations that there's a lot of people in the room that were older than me, right? And that I looked up to in our family, right? And then there was a question that was brought up about what should be done. I'm just trying to keep it very general, right? And then everybody just went, looked at me, right? And I'm like, why are you looking at me? Like, and I realized, and I remember afterwards I told Shelley, I said, today was the day I realized I was the guy. And I don't like being the guy. And she goes, but you're the guy. And I knew what she was saying, but I knew I did, it was weird because it's like, you want to be like him. And so I was always used to pointing to somebody else going, I want to be like him. I was the guy pointing, I want to be like that guy, And so it's really nice to hear, by the way, but it's always like uncomfortable when people say, yeah, you're the guy. It's like when I walk, I've gone into family situations where they introduce me because they don't know who I am. So they say, oh yeah, this is Victor Prieto, as they call me. And he goes, and then you just go on the lot and like, oh, just stop with that. Just introduce me, be done with it. That whole thing. And so it's really interesting how you don't want that. The more you don't want it, the more people want to heap that on you. And I think there's a cautionary tale there, though, and that is that you got to check your humbleness, man, every time. Check your ego at the door. Carry that humbleness right here with you all the time because it's a trap. It's a trap. It feeds your ego, but it's a trap. And so I'm always like reminded that I'm in a very blessed position. And not everybody is in that situation. But if you know me long enough that you know I don't really talk about my business in our family. I've never done it. And people have to go, well, I saw your stuff online. And they go, well, thank you for looking at it. But I never really talk about that because it always makes me feel uncomfortable because you know what I mean? It's like when you just don't want to break, you just want to be part of the family. You don't want to be the guy.
Part of the family, exactly.
You don't want to be the guy that stands out.
That's people's that's their inner desire to kind of want to feel as important without putting that kind of work in. However, it makes them also feel proud.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a situation where I would say, I want to kind of what kids call it now, clout chasing.
Right.
I'm not going to clout chase off, my uncle. I'm not going to say, yeah, I know, this, but like it took me, consistency, and it took me to really show that I was wanting to do this in order to, finally have that confidence to say, all right, Pietro, can you do this or whatever? And it could have been episode 1, but I'm just like, I need to know more so to prepare myself. But not only that, I want to show him that I'm very serious about this. And on top of that, I need to get my skills up. You know what I mean? I gotta get my shit right.
This is how you do it, man. Hey, by the way, I need you to do me a favor, though. I need you to do me a favor. It's a simple favor.
100%.
I want to know if you're bold enough to do me this favor, though. So this is for the audience right now. So I'm talking to the audience. I'm not talking to you, Nick. And so in my head, when I look at Nick, I just remember that little Nick, that little tiny Nick, it's about that big, right? With diapers. All you had was diapers on. Your big belly was always like sticking out, right? And you're running around, and your father would make you say "holy shit," but it would come out "holy sit," right? And so it would just crack up, because you were just so tiny running around the house, like little tiny little Nick. So I would like you to post a picture at this very moment, like right now, on your podcast. Let them see that picture if you still have your big belly picture with your little curly hair, the whole thing.
Oh, God, I'm sure I do.
So the folks can understand that when I'm talking to you, I have that image still in my head. That's how long we go back, how far we go back.
Oh man, yeah, there's so many stories I could say. When Doogie was little, and I remember he was a baby, and we were on 31st and 5th Street. I was probably 4 or 5 years old, and you're like, you're held a baby, Nicky. I was like, no. You're like, all right, you got to hold him by his butt, and I was like, well, how? Like this? And this. I swear to God, to this day, I still remember that.
Funny.
I remember being a kid at your wedding. I remember us. I think we were sleeping across from a church. I forget what it was, but
it was church, yeah.
It was church. So I remember, though, at the reception, me and Angel were playing outside. But before, in the reception, I'm behind the cake and I'm like swirling it, like eating it. And you're like, Nicky, I see you. And I'm like, oh shit. I remember all of that, all of it. And
I don't think I've ever heard that. I don't think I've ever heard that one. That's pretty funny.
Really?
I don't think I've ever heard that. I don't remember that. That's funny.
I remember like it was yesterday, and as I see that too. You see me as I see that Preto is just the tallest person I've ever seen in my life, and it's like it's more been, I guess you could say, it's the universe telling me how much of a metaphor that was, because I looked at you were taller than everybody. You know what I mean? I always looked at you as just this giant figure in the sky, where it's just like, wow, he's so tall and so big, and still to this day, it's just like, wow, look up there. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
And it's a true honor. 100%.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that, Nicky. Much love.
Love you to death. Love you to death. If anything, I'm gonna post links to anybody, and the coolest thing that anybody could possibly say is Google me. And if they want to know, I mean, you can tell them anything you want, whatever. The floor is yours now.
Google me. That's it. Victor Antonio, Google me. Thank you for having me on the show, Nicky.
I love it. Thank you for coming on. Thank you, and here's to season 1, episode 10. I'm glad for it. Thank you so much. I couldn't close it out a better way.
Good. Thank you, man.
Love you.